Down initially, and so we're thankful and grateful for you all. Thank you for dealing with me just as a sec as we're allowing people to come on and join us this rising. We are thankful and grateful for everybody for being on. Once again, I'm thankful and grateful to the Most High. All praises to Him. I'm thankful and grateful to the Most High for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. I am thankful and grateful to each and every one of you, our community members, for my family. You can check out my wife, by the way, at Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, she's a herbalist, she's a chemist, she's a biologist by degree. I also do apologize for those who were trying to get on live with us. I was not here, and we were trying to get things started, and signal-wise, it didn't really work out. I got a little hotspot that I'm trying to start using now, but I wasn't able to get my hands on it until basically time had passed this rising. So hopefully we won't worry about that. What we'll do to make up for that, for those who would like a makeup session, shalom to those who are coming on, shalom Chef, shalom Sister Cherie, shalom Kelly, and everybody else who's listening, shalom to those who are joining us on TikTok. What we'll probably do to hopefully make sure that that doesn't, or well, to make up for the fact that we missed the rising session, for those that were trying to come on, we'll see about possibly doing one. Shalom, Sister Erica. We'll see about pushing one to, or doing one on Wednesday. And if you guys want to, as a makeup for it, we'll see how many people. If a lot of us come on Wednesday, then we'll go ahead and not necessarily do a repeat. If only a few people come on Wednesday, then we'll kind of do something just special for you guys as a makeup, and then we'll start where we left off. Matter of fact, let's just keep that. Wednesday will be something a little special, or maybe we can do some Q&A on Wednesday. Thank you, Holy Spirit. We'll listen to Holy Spirit. Wednesday we'll come on early. If you want to join us at 6 a.m., we'll come on specifically just for some Q&A. And then Monday we'll start right back where we left off, okay? So if you're somebody who's interested in joining us on Wednesday, feel free to do so. I apologize about this rising. It just was, we just weren't able to make it happen. I was ready to go. I was trying. I came on a couple times, and but I couldn't even share. Like, I didn't have the ability to text, so I couldn't even send a link out or a reminder. We just were in a bad position signal-wise, so that's on me. And we'll make sure that we make that right, okay? So those of you who would like to be on, we'll make that right. Hey, how you doing, Trinity? Rayshawn, Sister Barbara on here. So those who were looking for us on Zoom and for the early rising Bible study this rising, we do that every rising at 6:45. I come on at 6:30 if you guys want to listen to music or fellowship some beforehand. But those who were trying to come on 6:45 Eastern, this for the early risers Bible study, I do apologize. I just was out of position. I thought I'd be back in this location. We travel quite often, and it just didn't work out. Shalom, Christine. You said you were there. Yeah, I apologize. Like I said, I just couldn't. Signal to signal, I guess. Let me not beat myself up. It just wasn't able to happen. So this is our series, Having Been Led as We Believe, right? And that's once again, a very great title that the Holy Spirit gave us, because it's not having been led as everyone believes. This is not everybody's going to agree. This is not us trying to say that you're evil if you disagree. This is not me saying I have a heaven or hell to put you in because you don't agree with me. None of that, right? That's not what we're doing here. We're saying having been led as we believe, right? I'm sorry, hold on one second. It's weird. Okay, so having been led as we believe, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get Facebook up real quick, and then we'll be able to go ahead and start. We've got the other platforms up and running. As you can see, I'm still trying to set things up. We're thankful and grateful, and we're still feeding off of the Women in Red that was led by my wife. Those of you who were there for that, prayerfully you were blessed. I heard a lot of great things about that. Those who came on, I do look forward to seeing what we continue to do. This is our year of pursuit, where we're pursuing the promises of the Most High, and we're excited to continue on that pursuit. And those who are joining us on that pursuit, thank you for being with us and doing your best to continue to thrive in this year. We're going to hashtag Finish Strong in that. And we're thankful and grateful. So we're talking about holy days in this series, having been led as we believe. This is part 8. So on our YouTube channel, which you can just look up hashtag FindKofi, hashtag FindKofi. You can go there for more information. And to be able to find out, you can also go to the podcast, the Kofi Ofori podcast, my name, the Kofi Ofori podcast, and you can check out what we've been talking about in this series. What does this represent? I mean, this is it's not really an Ndinka symbol or anything like that. It's something that's more tribal. And to be honest, it's not my tribe that's represented here, but this is this chemise, or this shirt, if you would like to call it. The fabric basically is just something that somebody who's West African would know. Certain tribes that are West African would wear this. Is it a shirt for celebration sometimes? But it's just basically something that's from a culture, really. I wouldn't say this particular one has particular, like it has to have a meaning. It's just basically like a calling card of the tribe that made it. You know, kind of like you'd have a brand, you know, that you would look at. You kind of have the calling card. It was up Brooklyn in the house. That's what's up. He said, I look like I know everything. Well, I don't know everything, but I will say this, I do know a lot. There's a saying that we like to use here now that we went over a little while ago. One who does not know that they do not know is a fool. Shun them, right? One that knows that they do, one that knows that he does not know is teachable. Teach him. One that knows that he knows is wise. Follow him. So I definitely will say the things that I know, and if you stick around, I believe that we'll make that very clear, that I know, like I'm a teacher. That's my gift. That's my calling. I can, do a lot of other things. I do beats and play music and do some things like that. But I know what I know. And the things that I know, I make sure that I present them in a manner in which you will know them. That's really the goal of this platform and what we do around the world. So once again, there are a lot of people that are foolish who don't even know that they don't know. Right. And they'll argue with you. And by the way, I don't even mind the argument, but I'm hoping we have more teachable people on here, right? Those who know that they do not know. Like, in order to be a master of something, a teacher, I have to be somebody who is also teachable, right? The second that I'm no longer teachable, the second that I believe I know everything, is the second that I'm of no value as a teacher. Real talk. So I always don't mind being taught or shown something. And matter of fact, what we're talking about today is due to the fact that I need to actually study some things before I kind of come back to some stuff, because some stuff was introduced to us. And in all honesty, I realized, I need to learn some things. So we're going to get back. We've talked about Christmas the last 2 days. And once again, this is a series, having been led as we believe. This is not to say somebody's stupid because they don't believe what we believe. This is not to say that you've got to believe what we believe. I'm sorry. Those on Facebook are getting a bunch of extra light. Let me shut my blinds real quick. I'm sorry, I should have had that done already. Give me a second. Let me shut these blinds real quick, and then we can start. So once again, this series is having been led as we believe. It's not having been led as everybody else believes. It's not that everybody has to believe every single thing I say. I'm somebody who's big. If you've been with us, you already know the term that I'm going to use. We have a term that we use here called contextual facts, right? Contextual facts, right? That the facts should have context, right? That the facts that we're talking about, they should have a context to them. And if they don't have context to them, then they're not really worth anything. A lot of people have facts with no context. A lot of people have context with no facts, right? You said we can't say we know because we read books made from another man and words are changed. True, but you can also look up when those words were changed. So to say that we know nothing, I think it's going too far, right? Like, a matter of fact, to act like people who say that they know everything. For example, when somebody will hit me, because I believe in science, right? But not all science is an exact science, right? That's something we can easily see, that not all science is an exact science. So if not all science is an exact science, then even when I look at science, I have to know culture. And that's why we always start with culture. Science is cultural. So when somebody says this is an exact science, I got to figure out what culture came from. When somebody says it's an exact science, what culture did it come from? The reason that you count the way that you do, even not all math is the same, because math is cultural, right? If you don't believe so, just look up the metric system and look up what you use, right? Everything is cultural, and we can look up to see where things came from. Yeah, some people say it's Persian. I've heard Asian, I've heard African. In all honesty, I don't really know. Nevertheless, if it's Persian, whichever, it's a great, it's a great proverb, right? So today, thank you, Henry. I appreciate that. So today, what we're gonna do, Puerto Rico, okay? What's up, Puerto Ricano people in the house? So today, what we're going to talk about is Thanksgiving. Having been led as we believe. Somebody says, what do you believe about Thanksgiving? Why don't you guys do Thanksgiving? And we're doing holy days for a little while, not just because Christmas is coming up, but because it was something that was, I had a list of questions from a few different people. And they said, when you guys start teaching what you believe, as far as a diaspora, right? As far as a group of belief system, people that carry this belief system, what is it that you believe? Okay, well, happy born day to your, your daughter's born day is December 25th. Okay. Oh, so they'll be turning 1 year old. That's awesome, Trinity. Amen. Well, as far as books and things of that nature, for what we're going to talk about specifically today, I'm not even sure which, because there's so many things, because we're not dealing with his story, we're dealing with the story. But I would say, look for books on Thanksgiving, look for books on Christmas, look for books on the Puritan movement, look for books on the Puritan separatist movement. I don't know if I have exact names for them, but we're going to come through a lot of stuff. Look for books on Wampanoag history, the Wampanoag people. Look for books on history of the people of Massachusetts. Matter of fact, those who are on Facebook and those who will watch this later on YouTube, I'm not sure if you're going to see. Well, I know Facebook, you're not going to see what I'm about to show, but let me just show you something real. Oh, you know what? I didn't set up the picture. There's a picture that I took off of a video I was watching. I get up early in the risings, and there was a video I was watching to try and make sure I was prepared and had some names together and things. I didn't make sure that I edited the picture. I don't even think it's going to show up where you guys can see it, but let me see. You'll be able to see it a little bit. I don't think you'll be able to see it the way I want you to, but you'll be able to see it somewhat, I think. So basically, you can't really see what I wanted you to see. But if you look up here over my head, if you're watching on TikTok or if you're watching this on YouTube later on, you'll see that all these tribes up here. So you can look for books on these tribes. I would say that'd be a great place to start as well. Because any of these books on these tribes are probably going to have to touch on what we're going to talk about today. If we're going to talk about Thanksgiving and what's going on with Thanksgiving. So, you've got the main people I'm going to talk about today, the Wampanoag. Here you have the, this isn't even the full name. It's like the Nadanget or Nadanet, there's the Nadaganet, excuse me. Then you have Massachusetts. People don't know Massachusetts is actually the name of an actual tribe, right? The tribe ended up getting messed over, and so now people who still live there, they say Massachusetts, thinking it's American, which in a sense it is, but it's not American how we think of in modern terms today. So this is something I would definitely look up if you're talking about certain books. I don't know if I have one specifically. I mean, I read, I'll be honest with you, I read more excerpts, even if they're big excerpts, or I listen to audiobooks. I'm traveling, I'm on the road a lot, I'm helping out people a lot, so I'm constantly moving, so I can't say that, and I'm being honest, even, a lot of stuff that I know, even as far as the word, I'm going to tell you a lot of things. Sometimes I'm just like, you have to Google the verse, or if I say something out of this, because I'm not one of those people that can just say every single verse. I'm pretty good with it, but there's sometimes where I'm not so nice that I can just say, go to this chapter, this verse, blah, blah, this and that. But if you want to look up these things, feel free to look them up. All right. Nevertheless, we're going to focus in on the story of Thanksgiving, and why is it that Thanksgiving is something that we don't believe and why we don't follow. Having been led as we believe is the name of this series. Now, having been led as we believe. So first and foremost, we have to set up context, right? Contextual facts. Let's make sure we have a great foundation to go off of, so that we're not just speaking and getting into emotion and getting into fights. However, has anybody ever thought about the fact that there's something interesting that happens in Thanksgiving, that we come together for Thanksgiving, right? Supposedly, yet leading up to Thanksgiving, you have all the stuff that comes into play. You have a lot of political kindling that gets put on a fire that causes people to be separated every time we get close to Thanksgiving. People start talking about Cristobal Colon, or who people know as Christopher Columbus. And it always happens right before, you can look up Columbus journals and all that, right? So just to even before I even got there, right, people are already starting to talk about Columbus, right? So why is it that Columbus comes up on Thanksgiving, even though Columbus never discovered well, first of all, he can't discover something somebody lived on. But secondly, he never stepped foot in the United States of America. Yet Thanksgiving is an American holiday that kind of goes all over the place, right? Why is it that there's a lot of division that shows up? Why is it that people will sit down to watch 3 football games, right, and be excited to wear different jerseys and go against each other in the spirit of competition, competing against one another, yet saying, hey, Thanksgiving brings us together, right? Why is it that we are not thinking about these things? Right? Like these are the things that are happening. Yeah, mucus filled or foods that cause mucus to flow and stuff like that rather than mucus to be expelled, causing a lot of dis-ease and sickness and things like that, right? So, and calcification or calcifying of the pineal gland, all those things, right? So why is it that Thanksgiving has all these things attached to it? Why is it that you're supposed to sit down for a time of peace? However, it's not a time of peace. Before I go into a whole thing of people are going to say, he's being racist and he's trying to just stay in history and blah, blah. I'm just asking a simple question. This thing that we say causes peace actually causes a lot of pulling apart, right? And so you have to look at things as far as some of the conquistadors were, but that's not what we're focused on, but I wouldn't disagree with that. Nevertheless, why is it that we deal with this Willie Lynch syndrome, this thing that says that we're going to take things that are small differences and we're going to use them to make people think that those differences are way bigger, right? Like we're going to take differences that are small. The way I liken it to it, the way I like to talk about it is like this. Imagine if I have a puzzle, right? And the puzzle is only 10 pieces and it's only like this big, right? If the puzzle is only this big, a little smaller than my head, and it's only 10 pieces, it's probably not going to be that difficult, right, to put together. There's differences, but the differences actually bring us together. It's something that's pretty simple. I can go ahead and put it together. But the plan of attack of an enemy, of the spirit of division that resides among people, when I talk about the spirit, I'm talking about pneumatical thought, right? P-N-E-U-M-A, pneuma. So I'm talking about pneumatical thought. This pneumatical thought causes division that causes people to expand to where now the puzzle might only be 10 pieces, but we've made the puzzle pieces as big as mountains, right? We made them as big as Mount Kilimanjaro. So now you got 10 puzzle pieces, but all of the size of Mount Kilimanjaro. Well, it's going to be pretty hard to put those puzzle pieces together. You're going to have to develop technology and you're going to have to deal with all types of stuff. You're going to have to looking at it from different perspectives and all these things, because something that's really supposed to be this small has been made so vast, the differences, right? And Thanksgiving is when you have a bunch of differences that sit down at the table. No matter what people want to tell you, there's a spirit of division. You might think, that's why, think about like some of the Thanksgiving memes and videos that you laugh at and stuff. What are they about? When somebody shows up to Thanksgiving and somebody's bringing somebody of a different race, and how does everybody deal with that, right? That's some of the stuff that you look at and laugh at. Or when somebody's going to come to Thanksgiving and they know they're going to be asked a question that they really don't want to answer. So they're going to get up and leave the table. After traveling all this time to be able to see people, then they're just going to get up and leave and not sit down with everybody else, right? Those are things that we're still dealing with, right? Those are things that we're still dealing with, So we have to look at these things. Okay, Bugatti, this is nonsense. You haven't even heard what we're going into, but thank you very much. When people say that and have nothing else to say. You said baking soda limit. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Bugatti. It put you out of order. I'm sorry. I'm with you. I see what you. Oh, never mind. Well, I don't know what you said. I apologize though. It looked like you were saying something different. Let's see. Shalom to those who are coming on, by the way. And thank you for the likes, for the shares, for being with us, for the gifts, all that great stuff. We appreciate it. It helps us with the algorithm across all the platforms. We're thankful and grateful for you all. So this is, and shalom, Helen, shalom, Deborah. I see you guys coming in on the podcast. So when we're talking about this stuff, why is there such division? Where does this stuff even come from? Because why is it that Columbus gets interjected? Why is it that Thanksgiving is political? First of all, why is Thanksgiving misappropriation of culture? Now, somebody said misappropriation of culture. It's misappropriation of European culture. Like, a lot of people don't know that. First of all, let's start there. Thanksgiving is misappropriation not of native culture, even though it kind of sort of can become that, right? Depending on what you do on Thanksgiving. But it's not just misappropriation of native culture or Hebrew culture or biblical culture. It is misappropriation of European culture. I know people say Europeans don't have culture. That's not true, right? I'm not saying that there aren't people who are European that haven't stolen something from somebody else. That's not. I'm not here to deny that. I'm not here to really confirm that right now. But you know what? That stuff is what it is. I'm talking about as far as Thanksgiving is misappropriation of European culture. Because Thanksgiving has nothing to do with what we think it is. Thanksgiving, if you just use it as a straight up, before we go into all these other things that have been brought to the table, if we were just look at what Thanksgiving is supposed to be according to European culture, according to when it started, Thanksgiving is supposed to be a time of fasting. If somebody talks about a time of Thanksgiving, they're supposed to be talking about a time of fasting. Fasting is breaking away from certain things. Fasting, that's what fasting really means, right? Now, it can be breaking away from food, right? Right, but I won't use the term breaking because you can have break fast, so some people might take that the wrong way. But it's basically like separating yourself from something. To fast is to separate yourself from something, right? So you have a time to spiritually focus on what to be thankful and grateful for and reconnect, right? Sure, European is not a color. We've already talked about that before. You know, European is somebody that used to be owned by Rome. That's what a European is. And even British people have black blood, and Celtic people have black blood, right? Especially if you know Celtics used to stretch from Kemet, or really further down than Kemet, all the way up through Asia, then Eurasia, then Europe, right? Until now, where people think the only Celtic people are because they think of Irish and Celtic going together. So we didn't say that at all. Once again, this is having been led as we believe. If you're coming in trying to argue somebody else's belief system, I get it. However, you might just want to listen to see if we know what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about what you think you were talking about. I could care less about somebody being better than somebody else just because they happen to be a color. Grand rising to you. Thanks for being on. So getting back into this, right? So when you're dealing with Thanksgiving, see what I'm saying? You already have all this division that shows up because of Thanksgiving. We're not even listening. You hear what I'm saying? This division shows up automatic. Right? Yeah, and it's not for everyone, those who have an ear to hear, right? But it's so when you're talking about Thanksgiving, if anything, when it comes to Thanksgiving, you should be in a place of fasting. First and foremost. If it comes to anything, specifically Thanksgiving, it should be a place of fasting. So the fact that you're going to get with a bunch of people and the goal is to cook as much food and to eat as much as possible, as long as possible, and travel long journeys to sit around the table to have gluttonous behavior is something that speaks against, or forget even gluttonous behavior, if you're eating at all, it's actually misappropriating somebody's culture. If you believe in this Eurocentric version of Christianity, right? And once again, I know European doesn't mean white, but European means a group of people that at one point were owned by Rome and that still want to have their Greco-Roman ties. So these people who would be European, right? Look up historically. If Africa was conquered, the parts of Africa were conquered, black people were conquered, guess what they were called? It was called Europa, right? So now the people who call themselves Europa and put on a map, because remember, Europe didn't used to be a continent. Matter of fact, the continent is supposed to be a large landmass completely surrounded by water, which means that Africa, Asia, and Europe are one continent. Technically, we're all still one continent because we're all connected underneath the water, whether you believe in pre-Pangea, after Pangea, whatever. If you think of the mindset, we're still connected. We're still one continent. Nevertheless, Europe is something that was made up later on by people who wanted to say that we carry that people that come from that Charlemagne thing, where Charlemagne took over from the Romans that they had conquered as people that conquered, and the Romans took over from the Greeks and all this other stuff, right? And if you go back and further in the history, we're not dealing with what we think of today as white people. We're actually dealing with what you would think of as darker skinned people. Some of you would look at Justinian and Theodore. Some of you would have looked at possibly Marcus Aurelius. Some of you would have looked at Septimius Severus, if you know who I'm talking about. Septimius Severus, he was an African, and he was an emperor, and his two sons sat on the throne as well, right? So what we think of as Europe is not exactly what Europe is. What we think of as Europe is not exactly what Europe is. The further back we go into the story of mankind, the darker we all get. Right? When we look at people who are lighter, it usually is a melanin deficiency type thing, or it's even a different type of melanin where the melanin is not selenium at the center of the melanin. We're looking at sulfur at the center of the melanin. Okay, so understand that I get it that we're not talking about white people, right? But once again, people who are on are going to immediately go to a place of the separation piece, right? Because we're not even thinking about Thanksgiving. First of all, should be time of fasting. Fast means to what? Let it go. So if you're coming in here talking about Thanksgiving, if we're going to give honor to the actual holy day or holiday from somebody else's culture, then we should come to a place where we fast and let that stuff go so we can actually have a better conversation, right? Well, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, all of them. Britain, which you now call England and stuff like that, or Celtic people, Irish people, all of it. The further back you go into the story of mankind, the darker everybody gets, right? So you said you're not separating telling the truth. Okay, well, you said you're not separating telling the truth. I never said, and never have I said, and never ever shall I say, that European means white. That's something that you came on here and said European doesn't mean white. So you're saying, yeah, you told the truth. Exactly. You told the truth, but you did it to be a place of, this guy is automatically, he's telling something that's a lie, or he's trying to focus on white versus black. And you don't know me very well if that's the case. So that's not the truth about me. Learn of me. Learn of what I believe. Right? Then you can tell the truth about me, and we can have truthful conversation. Because I want to honor you. Why won't you honor my humanity as well? So nevertheless, when we're speaking on these things, you have to get to a place where you understand Thanksgiving is supposed to be a time of fasting. So that first and foremost means that if you're going to celebrate Thanksgiving with a bunch of food, cooking food all out, doing all these things, we're in a situation to where, we're already off. We're already off. Number one. So now we have to start dealing with the mythical, right? Really, even if you're going to deal with the spiritual, you got to deal with the mythical, because a lot of people are so, talking about spiritual, they think that we're into the mystical rather than the practical. Let's deal with practicality, right? Let's deal with practical application. Let's deal with how we can use this every day and how this is used every day and why there's dysfunction in something that's supposed to be very functional, all right? Why is there all these different things? Why is it that there's already separation? Why is it that we mention Thanksgiving? Why is it that because somebody sees me in cultural dress for my people, that they automatically have made the assumption that now everybody, everything I'm going to talk about is about white on the bottom now and black on the top, and I'm going to reverse the roles and do reverse racism and all that. Why is it that we automatically jump to this place? Right? Why is it that we automatically jump to this place, right? It's because of all these different people we're going to talk about. Even somebody right now in the comment section, people are going back and forth about countries and stuff. Well, let's talk about countries, right? Because if we're talking about Thanksgiving, the reason why there's a big deal about it is because people are under this belief and carrying a bunch of stuff that's actually division oriented, thinking that it causes us to come together. When you talk about Thanksgiving, what you were taught in school, which a lot of people know by now is false. However, just in case, you're taught in school that basically Puritans came over. They were looking for for spiritual freedom. They wanted freedom of religion. They came, they landed on Plymouth Rock. When they landed on Plymouth Rock, they met up with Squanto. They met Squanto. Squanto was able to help them to farm and stuff. Other natives came. They played nice. They had a nice existence. They had this great dinner. And so every time you come together for Thanksgiving, that's what Thanksgiving is actually about. And that's what we are taught in school. That's what your children are taught in school. That's what people talk about. And if you mention anything other than it, then it becomes part of the CRT conversation, right? Which is the theory, right? I'd rather go by critical race fact than critical race theory, right? Nevertheless, people come and it's a spirit of chaos, it's a spirit of division, right? The ruler of this world wants confusion. Thank you. Is it Pride? Is it Pritzny? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Is that how you say it? Right. Well, even people say most of us bleed the same. We don't have the same blood type. We don't have the same blood. That's why we all carry different DNA. You can tell somebody if they were born from you 99.9999 whatever percent as a father to a child. Nevertheless, though, we're all humanity, and trying to get to that humanity is the point. I don't deny people's humanity. So if somebody has skin that you would say it's pink or whatever, whatever we want to get into actual colors, that's part of who you are. I appreciate that about you. If you have hair that is harder to put a comb through than others, I appreciate that. That's part of who you are. If you have a beard, I appreciate that. That's part of who you are, right? And so I don't do the whole we don't see color thing. I believe that we should love everything about everybody. See, here we go about color. Here we go about color. Yeah. The mindset, I don't know how long, you're going to last on here. I don't block or do anything to anybody, but I would say this: you are automatically going to places that you don't comprehend. You're putting your stuff on there. You're ready to fight, right? The reality is you're putting your stuff on here and you're ready to fight because your mindset is one that, because he would dare say that all colors should be loved, here he goes about color. Right, so he got blocked though. Whatever. Thank you to the moderators for doing what they do. We want everybody to be on here, but disagreement is one thing. Trying to take over, trying to like go ad hominem, which is just basically trying to make fun of somebody to make a point, or say somebody's stupid to make your point. We don't allow that in our community for anybody. Just letting you know. So we don't want anybody on here to feel like you can't ask a question. Just be respectful, and hopefully you've seen I'll be respectful towards you just with this one person that's been on here today, right? So as we get into this again, Thanksgiving, what are we dealing with when we deal with Thanksgiving? It's supposed to be a time of fasting. It's not a time of fasting. We were taught this thing about Squanto and everything went well and everything was perfect. However, it's not true, right? It's not true at all. All right. So this is what's going on with Thanksgiving. You got a lot to go through. First and foremost, we have to comprehend that before we even get to the day of Thanksgiving that people try to tell you about, which it wasn't even a day, it was multiple days of them eating together. Before we get to a place of where we were, what we're talking about today as far as Thanksgiving, a specific time, a specific place, a specific date, etc., we have to first be honest about what's going on culturally. We have to first be honest about what's going on culturally. So before... Well, let's do it like this. People do chattel slavery, and people believe that chattel slavery in the Americas or worldwide didn't exist until like the 1500s, the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, stuff like that. When people talk about chattel slavery, a lot of times we're so small-minded, narrow-minded, we usually only think about 1861 to 1865, forgetting that war technically started in 1856, and technically that war started all the way back to 76, right? And that war starts before then, which we're going to get into. But there are a lot of different factors, and we want to make sure that we get this time-wise, contextual from all these different places, right? Yeah, exactly. One of the presidents did set a precedent. He made it 1 year or 1 day, right? But the reality is that Thanksgiving has a lot of stuff to it. And so that's why you'll hear stuff about slavery connected to Thanksgiving. That's why you're going to hear Christopher Columbus connected to Thanksgiving. That's why you can't talk about Thanksgiving without talking about Dutch, without talking about Spanish, without talking about the English. You can't talk about these things just from one point of view, right? Or one place, because it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's kind of like that butterfly effect type thing, right? Yeah, and Thanksgiving is offensive to indigenous people. I'm Native. I'm part Native. So I know that part of my story and represent that well, right? So, well, Joe Biden divides everybody, Trump divides everybody, Obama divides everybody, Bush divides everybody. All the presidents are supposed to be in the goal of causing division. That's why there's two Americas, not just white, black, right? I'm not just talking about MLK's speech. I'm talking about there's a United States corporation and the United States of America. By definition, that would be division, two visions in one country that people don't even know exist. Right? That's the system that you're in. It's designed to be chaotic. That's Willie Lynch syndrome. We're going to put the anomaly that Willie Lynch taught, the anomaly that will bring everybody together will be when people are introduced to tangible evidence, things that they can actually touch for the first time and be able to see who they actually are. So to keep them from there, because he said the brain is wired to be able to not only correct, but continue to recorrect itself over and over and over again. So he said, what we have to do is keep introducing a whole bunch of other anomalies that will make it hard for people to find tangible evidence of who they are. Right? So even when somebody comes on here, Republican and Democrat, I don't do Republican and Democrat, because Republican and Democrat, all of them are part of the same corporation. Right? Look up 3002 15A. 15 Aleph. For some of you would say 15 Alpha. 3002 15A. 3002 15A. Look it up, and you'll discover that America is or the United States is a corporation. You'll find that the United States of America are 50 states or 50 countries that are supposed to protect those that are trying to live private as sovereign rather than be influenced by public. That's government. That's bottom line, right? That's the bottom line, right? So, Hammer, I don't know what you're talking about. Am I talking to you? You're saying? Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I am. I guess I was talking to you. But once again, right, to not be offensive. Up, see, you might have already gone. We have moderators here for a reason, so thank you to the moderators, right? Nevertheless, when people are still in a place of trying to be separated. They love. Remember we talked about this yesterday. They love to live in the lie rather than deal in the truth. They love to continue because the lie is nostalgic, even if the truth gives you better results. Oh, okay. Glad that you're back, Bagweezy. Shalom. I'm grateful to have you back. Been a long time. So, hey, Frank, how you doing? So, when we're talking about Thanksgiving, you've got a whole bunch of stuff showing up to the table. And people do not want to talk about these things that are showing up. And if I deal with these things, now you have to start dealing with self. You have to start thinking about your family. You have to start thinking about your funds that you receive. You have to start thinking about all these things. Is privilege real? Is it not? Even if I deal with bad things, does it mean that other people haven't dealt with bad things, if not worse? Therefore, being like everybody's equal, so my pain is equal to your pain, because we don't believe in equality here. Every person goes through something different. I've lost my mother. Somebody else could lose their mother. It doesn't mean that we go through equal pain, because I didn't have the same mother you did. I did not have the same experiences. But somebody would say, well, we both lost our mothers, right? So we're in a place where people don't like to say, hey, it can't be about equality because no two people are equal. The reason why my wife and I have a great marriage is because my wife and I are not equal. I can never be her and she can never be me. So the fact that I respect the things that she can do that I cannot do, and she does vice versa, allows us to become one, because it's our differences that, right, puzzle pieces are different. So it's the different puzzle pieces that come together to be able to make the puzzle. So the fact that we've accepted those differences and we begin to place these differences with each other that help us to be better is what's greater, right? And that makes us greater. And so when it comes to Thanksgiving, a lot of people can't handle it because we've got to deal with differences, and people don't want to deal with differences at all. People don't want to deal with differences at all. People want to fight to keep equality when no two people have ever had the same DNA, no two people have ever had the same fingerprint, no two people have ever had the same hair, no two people have ever had the same irises, no two people have ever had the same anything. It is impossible, right? So in order to get this, you have to respect the differences. You have to talk about the differences, and you have to talk about the things that were great. You have to talk about the things that are not so great. That's why if you recognize, we made it a point to first start off with Thanksgiving should be a time of fasting. Okay. And if it's not a time of fasting, then you're not even talking about what the people who originally were talking about Thanksgiving were. Thanksgiving didn't start in America. Thanksgiving started in Europe. That's just a fact. Right? You said, yes, if you're wicked and you're wicked, and as a whole, in general, your race is wicked. Okay. I guess we're doing a thing of, I don't know if that's about me or about white people or something like that, or black people in general, whatever. That's not my stance. I don't have that stance. I'm not here to say that somebody's wicked just because. I can tell you why wickedness is in a culture. And so somebody might need to come out of a culture that says that they're supposed to be better than somebody else because of the color of their skin. But I'm not going to make the assumption and the leap that nobody can be grafted into this thing. All right. That's not what we believe. So Thanksgiving, the reason why you're going to deal with stuff as far as Columbus is because you're going to deal with natives. Now, how do we make that jump? If Columbus was in the Caribbean, right, or in the West Indies even, right, and you have Thanksgiving supposedly supposed to take place in Wampanoag territory, right underneath Massachusetts, right? How do you make that leap? How do you make that leap? Yes, I am a pastor. I'm not a Christian, but I'm what translates to a pastor, a koheleth or a marach. Really, a koheleth. A marach is just a teacher or a guide. I'm called that as well, but I'm a marach in our culture. I'm a koheleth in our culture. That's what you would call a pastor. So here we are. So here we are talking about these things, and we're not even aware of what's going on with Thanksgiving. So the reason why you have native stuff going on is because Christopher Columbus comes over and he had to be given permission to come over, right? So it's about authority. Let's talk about authority. Authority is going to be something that's going to help us out because we're very much so into law, kingdom law, marital law, natural law, laws of attraction, universal law, etc. Right? So lawfully, Christopher Columbus can't come over to what you now call America if Christopher Columbus himself is not allowed to. That's pretty simple, right? If Christopher Columbus is not allowed to come over to America, he can't come over to America. Yeah, you have to be ordained, but ordained is different in my culture. How I ordain is different than a lot of other people ordain. Nevertheless, when it comes to Thanksgiving, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get past it, but that's the goal for today, right? So when we're talking about our culture, and we're talking about not just our culture, we're talking about Thanksgiving, authority is important. Other people think about authority all the time. As much as you're told not to worry about authority, you're told to be anti-authority. You're told, you're told to sing these songs. Back in the day, I don't know if it's 80s or 90s song. We're not going to take it, things like that. And we think that that's cool. The reality, though, is that you don't do anything unless somebody authorizes you to do it, right? So what was that language that I just spoke? I'm not sure what the language was. I thought I was speaking in English. I'm not sure if I said something outside of it. Nevertheless, so Christopher Columbus had to be allowed to come over by Isabel, Queen of Spain. But Isabel had to have authority too. This is all important. Isabel had to have important authority too. She couldn't just send Christopher Columbus over to America, right? So she had to ask somebody permission to send Christopher Columbus. Now, Christopher Columbus couldn't even have the authority to be able to say he could go over to America. If you didn't check out in his journal, he had been selling with Africans at least since 1482. So that's at least 10 years before, according to his own journal, he was learning how to be able, that African people who had been going over to the Americas for centuries before, for thousands of years before even, right? He learned from them how to get over there. He goes and says to Queen Isabel, hey, I know how this stuff works because I learned from them. Now, Queen Isabel, you have to remember, she's just finished, her and her husband had two different territories in what we now know as Spain. They were the king and queen of two different territories. There was a third territory that was still over by people we would now call Moors, right? And these Moors were people who looked like myself. And they were African. And it doesn't mean that they all believed in the Bible. Doesn't mean they all were Muslim. It didn't mean they all were whatever. Like, they had different belief systems. They had different natures, different principles, different deities. However, they worked together and they ruled together as one. They had been over Spain from the 700s. And if you check out from there what happened, they had been over that from the 700s, since the 700s. And if you go back in history past Rome, you'll discover that before Christ, for 1,000+ years, the Carthaginians had been over Spain, which means that you were dealing with black people who had been in a position of power, basically for thousands of years. Queen Isabel and the king had just finished coming from people who were faithful to the Pope, and their parents had been in something that we call nowadays the Crusades, right? So their people had been something called the Crusades, which were people who were saying that these brown and black people are evil over there because they're not us. We're the Christians. We are the Bible carriers. We're the ones that Jesus says is supposed to do this. They had just finished using iconoclasts to start changing the color of Christ, right? So he said these people are evil. And why did the Pope at that time even say we need to do that? The Pope at that time said we need to go ahead and attack them because Europeans, or people who considered themselves Europeans at that time, were fighting amongst themselves so much that they were killing each other off, and they were enslaving each other, and they were doing wild stuff to each other. The Pope is supposed to be the King of Kings because he's supposed to be the vicar, the representation of Christ upon the earth realm. That's what he's supposed to be. So since he's supposed to be the vicar, yes, I am an Israelite, I am Avra, if you want to call it Hebrew, I am Hebrew. So he sees that going on. He says, you're messing up my kingdom because all of you bow down to me. So he says, send them. So he puts out word that, hey, Jerusalem over there, Jerusalem, they got all these people over there that don't look like you, and they're taking land that belongs to you. Go and fight for that land. Right? And that's what happened with the Crusades. They sent people began to promise them. You know how people say it's so crazy that Muslims will say, or people who swear that they're Muslims, because I wouldn't consider these people to be Muslims either, because that's not proper usage of the word jihad. Nevertheless, they'll tell you that if you take up this jihad and you go and you kill somebody, you have all these virgins when you get to heaven. That's what the Pope was saying. I know you want to say that that's like a Muslim thing only. Understand it, like Christians were telling other Christians that if you go and kill these people and take their land and say that it's in the name of Christ, they said that they were telling men, you'll be able to get this many virgins when you die. Right? So basically, wrecking, what we would call today, we could just be blunt with it, wrecking shop, so to speak, taking somebody's virginity, whether they want you to or not. A woman was that much of an object in Christianity back then that you just basically said, hey, go kill all these men, women, and children. And then when you go to heaven, you'll just be, you can't get all these women now. You can't handle all these women now. You can't afford these women now. But when you get to heaven, we're just going to be throwing virgins at you. Every time you have sex with somebody, you're just going to be messing up their purity, their chastity. That's what happens in heaven. That's their version of heaven. Think about the cultural implication in that. Once again, though, if we're going to talk about this, we got to have a conversation. This is Thanksgiving type stuff. This is stuff that sits down at your table that we don't even think about. Trying to figure out why is there division? Why do people feel uncomfortable? This is why, like, people go into Christmas celebrations, like we were talking about, and you got mistletoe hanging, which means that if you hang mistletoe, there's supposed to be the sense that some woman, really was more man on man, if we be honest, back then with the Greco-Roman stuff. But nevertheless, you hang some mistletoe and some woman's just supposed to give it up because she's just supposed to be an object. Her virginity, what makes her chaste, you're becoming one with her, isn't a pure act or whatever. It's just that she's an object. So you can take whatever you want. Yeah, it is very perverted, Minister Nice. But that's what you're dealing with, right? So they told him to go over there. So this same mindset, Queen Isabel grew up thinking that those crusades were an amazing thing. Her and her husband got married because they wanted to have 2/3 of Spain. Once they had 2/3 of Spain, they fought the Moors, and they actually tricked the Moors. They didn't really defeat them all the way out, but they kind of beat up on them and got them to do like this fake treaty, and then they basically like wrecked shop, made slaves of some of them, kicked the rest out, and killed a lot of them, and cut up their bodies, put them all over the place so that people would be scared to mess with this new Spanish empire. And that's the first time Spain becomes a country, 1491. Spain was never a country up until 1491. It was always a bunch of territories, and those territories, for the most part, had a black leadership over them, right? So Queen Isabel, in her mind, because of the Crusades, the Moors are an enemy, not just because of whatever belief system they have, but because of the color of their skin. Anybody who has that color of their skin, they are an infidel. They are an infidel. Yeah, they took riches, things like that, right? So anyways, I'm talking about Christianity right now. That's, once again, people missing this, right? So once we deal with that and we're honest about that, right? Once we're honest about that, let's keep on going, right? Once we're honest about that, let us keep on going, right? Those who are on Facebook, we're going to switch over to IG real quick if you want to follow us over, right? So once we finish with that, and we're honest about that, and we're being truthful about that. Now, what's the next thing that we need to do? What should we be truthful about this time? Okay, so now Isabel, who thinks that this is going against black people, is her jihad, so to speak. I know she wouldn't have used that term, but you guys should get what I'm saying now contextually. Now that we're dealing with that, she goes to the Pope, right? She hears Christopher Columbus. She knows that Christopher Columbus has fought against these black people, but she knows enough about Moors and Africans that she knows that they sail all the time. Christopher Columbus says, well, look, I can be the white guy, even though he wasn't, right? He was, he wasn't really white, but he passed. And he said, look, I can be the guy to go over if you give me land, if you give me opportunity, if you let me do this, that, or whatever. I can be the one that goes over there and locks these people up, and get you slaves. That's what he said. A lot of people don't know. He was not sent over just looking for new land. They knew this land existed because slaves were already being taken from the Americas. People don't even think about that. And Africans had already been over there. And you can go and look for stuff as far as back, like, people don't know. Go to, I believe it's Mississippi. It might be Alabama as well, right? But go to Mississippi and see if you can look up when you get a chance to, right? You got to be careful in Mississippi. I get it. But when you go over to Mississippi, see if you can look up something as simple as just look at the pyramids that are in Mississippi, hundreds of them, at least 100. I say that, right? Go to Indiana, Illinois, and look for pyramids with Kemetic writings on them in the middle of America. But people will keep telling you and I that Africans had no ability to be able to sail. They want you to believe that. Well, she knew back then that they had the ability to sail. So Christopher Columbus sealed the deal because he said, "Hey, look, I'll go over there and I'll go looking for the land of Asheroth," which is what they're going to present to the Pope. The land of Asheroth is basically the land of Asheroth simply means that if you look up in Scripture, and I'm talking about Scripture, I'm talking about the Apocrypha, 2nd Esther chapter 13 verses 40 through 45. The land of Asheroth is talking about going to look for a place where Israelites went to, where they wanted to worship Yah, and these were where the I say like 9 out of the 12 tribes left and went across the Bering Strait, and it was known, right, that they went there and they were looking for a place where they could worship Yah, which is why even like I'm Cherokee, the original name for Cherokee actually translates to the people of Yah. And our cousins, the Choctaw people, their name actually translates to the people of the skirts. It was known. Matter of fact, we know that there's Hebrew artifacts that you can find Paleo-Hebrew in the Bering Strait. We found Paleo-Hebrew artifacts on the East Coast. We found it in Cherokee land, etc. Right? So this is not mythical. This is practical. If you just follow the stuff. And so they were getting ready to send them over to this land of Asheroth. Right? They were getting ready to send them to the land of Asheroth. Right? This is reality. That if you look up when they went to the Pope, so Christopher Columbus tells Queen Isabel this. Queen Isabel has to go to her boss. Right? She has to go to the Pope. And the Pope says, well, if all this stuff is in order, like you're saying, go ahead and go. But this is the Pope's, this is what the Pope says, because he knows what she's sending them over there for, because they're anti-black and they're going to make more black slaves. And they're going to take these people who, this is their chosen land, and they're going to say, we're these chosen people, which we'll see this rear its ugly head again when we're talking today. So he says, okay, when you do this, no problem. Just make sure you bring me back slaves. Bring me back tribute, but part of the tribute better be some slaves. This is what the Pope said. Right? This is what the Pope says. So when the Pope sends the people all the way over, right? When the people sends these people all the way over, or he allows Spain to send Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus shows up with an army, right? And what does he do? He makes slaves. Then he ends up leaving and coming back and brings more army and makes more slaves, and does things like raping women. He does things like killing the men, things that are Willie Lynch-like, right? He does things like raping little girls to the point to where little girls are so messed up that they can't have babies, or that or working slaves so hard that the girls that get pregnant and can have babies, their babies can't be nurtured because their babies can't breastfeed because these 13, 14-year-old girls can't actually get breast milk out. He does things like killing babies, but he doesn't kill them with guns. He orders that his men kill them with hammers, because to kill them with a bullet would be a waste of ammo. I'm talking about Cristobal Colon, Christopher Columbus. These are things that he does, right? So when people bring up Columbus during Thanksgiving, people get frustrated by it, because you're like, hold on, why are you invoking all these weird things? Why are you bringing this person who ultimately led to his own destruction, right? By the way, Christopher Columbus then will Christopher Columbus will end his life basically in prison. Some people say being killed in prison or just dying in prison. He will be ended there, and people want you to believe it's because the Queen said, oh, it's so terrible what you did in slavery, but they brought slaves back to her. Matter of fact, one of the reasons we know that they did is because we also know, that's how we know the West African, Israelite, and native Taino connection, right? That's how we know it, because they came back and they told the truth. They said, man, we got over there, and these Taino people over there in the island we landed on, Hispaniola, right, or Haiti, Dominican, right? He even went to Cuba. When he got to these places, he said, man, these people over there, they said that they were part African and that they met with people that came over from Africa. And they said that we didn't believe him. He wrote this in his journal, by the way, too. So not only can you read about this in historical documentation, but you can also just look up Christopher Columbus' journal, right? But nevertheless, He said, yeah, we came over and they spoke. We had to use an Israelite interpreter because we knew we were going to the land of Asherah. So we brought a Hebrew interpreter. This Hebrew interpreter spoke with them. They kept telling us, yeah, we know about people from Africa. We are mixed with them. We've been doing this for a while. And matter of fact, we use the same weapons. They use a weapon. They use a term called guanin. Guanin, Guanin. He said that they used this term, guanin. And so we know about this weapon they had. They had these guanin weapons. And Christopher Columbus said, I know what guanin is because I sailed with these people. I know what guanin weapons are. So they didn't believe him. They brought it all the way back to Spain. Queen Isabel said she had fought against the Moors. She knew what guanin was. She didn't believe it either. They actually studied it, and they said, they're made the same way, the same metallurgy. They use the same metals. They use the same percentage of metals. Interesting. They brought it to the Pope when they brought the slaves to the Pope. And the Pope, people looked at it too. They said, yeah, all this stuff matches up. This was known. This is known. Right? This is known. Right? So this was known by the person who was there. So we know that nobody cared that he was making slaves and chattel slavery was already happening. The issue that pops up with Christopher Columbus, what got him put in prison and later on that would die in prison or murdered, I'm not sure. Nobody really is. But what we do know, what got him locked up was not because he had slaves. He was playing people against each other. He was working for Portugal on the low. He was telling the Spanish that he was going to give them money. He was even talking about Italy and trying to help all these people. He was trying to finesse everybody into paying him a bunch of money for the same thing, and then having these people try to fight it out after he left and, with his own money to live somewhere. That's what he was trying to do. They caught him in the midst of it, and they locked him up. Now the queen, because she can't be seen on the same level as him, what does she have to do? Oh, he's out here making slaves. She didn't care. He was bringing her back slaves, right? But that's because we don't know. So now somebody says, well, that's all fine and great, and I get why people be irritated that we bring Columbus in, but what is Columbus? If we just be honest, right? If we were just asking a real question, I'm not mad at the question. It's something I ask myself. What in the world does that have to do? We're talking about Columbus. What does that have to do with America? Columbus, got permission in 1491 after they beat the Moors to sail the ocean blue in 1492. You're talking about the early 1600s. When you talk about Thanksgiving, why are you putting the two together? See, you're off. You don't have your timeline together. That's what a lot of people would say. All right. So if that's what we're going to say, no problem there. That's what some people would do. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. XYZ. All right. So we have to now you have to look at chattel slavery, because the chattel slavery is what we're dealing with. They want you to believe that these Americans came over and they've never heard of a native before, this and that, or whatever. These people that the Puritans came over. That's not the reality. You must understand that before Puritans came over, and we'll get to that term, but before Puritans even came over in the 1600s, you have to understand that there were already people for at least a century. So we're talking about well into the early 1500s, for at least a century, that had been coming over to what you call the New World and had been making slaves of natives. This is fact, right? So understand that chattel slavery was already going on way before these Puritans showed up, right? So, and we know this because I'm going to pull up this picture again. I wish I had edited better so you guys could see it. I didn't edit it at all. But let me pull up this picture again just to remind you what I'm talking about. So if those of you who can't see the picture on other platforms, you've got the Wampanoag people, which are going to be the people that are going to deal with the natives, right? And these Wampanoag people, and what we now call their chiefs, we're dealing with destruction and stuff, because the Wampanoag people, for the most part, had been having people coming all over the place, right? And up to Massachusetts. That's what Massachusetts is called Massachusetts, because that was a native tribes place as well, right? And you had Massachusetts, you had the Wampanoag, you had all these people, and they were fighting against people over to the west, right? And at the same, so they were in their own civilizations. They had beef amongst themselves already. Now here come these European people. Here come these European people, and they're coming over, right? And they're landing over here on the shores, and they're saying that we want to do trade with you, but they're actually lying, and they're actually taking slaves. Now, because of this, there had been a fight for hundreds of years. People kept coming to try and make slaves, but the natives would post up on the coast to make sure that none of their people could be taken. So, and they know now, now word is spreading. Hey, Christopher Columbus and people doing this over here. Medical Vespucci is doing this stuff a little further this way. Now you got these people that have been coming here on the coast. And by the way, they've been coming on the coast probably before Columbus, because people forget Leif Erikson and them boys that showed up a long time ago. So people knew about this place. They want you to believe it's a new world and stuff. That's a lie from the pit of hell to continue to cause hellish chaos and confusion to reside to be around us all the time, right? But people knew, and they were posted up on this coast. They were like, we're not going to let people come over and just keep taking our men, women, and children like this, right? But eventually, I want to say late 1500s, early 1600s, probably late 1500s, people came and they started spreading disease. So now not only were they lying about trade and then trying to take people, but now they started lying about trade and they started saying, okay, here's a blanket or something, and they just make sure they wiped out a whole community. And because people had never seen this disease before, they didn't know what to eat or anything, how to make sure that they were their immune system was built up for it, and so they started getting knocked out. So now the Wampanoag people especially, but really all of these people, the Massachusetts Wampanoag, etc., but the Wampanoag people especially, they're in a position to where it's going to be really difficult. It's really difficult for them to be able to fight, because they're also fighting against their enemies. So now this is a weakened place that they're in. They're in a place where they're extremely weak. They're in a place where they can't fight enemies on all sides. And now people who are trying to come together, it's too late to come together. You should have been together as one to make sure you were united. Now somebody who's coming and was saying, hey, we'll trade with you and we'll help you to defeat these people. Same thing they did in Africa, same thing they did in Australia, all these other places. Like, we'll help you to defeat your enemy. Same thing they did in India, right? Same thing they did in the Caribbean. We're the good guys. We're here for you, with the whole goal of making slaves and killing you off if you won't let them go ahead and make a slave of you. To make it easier for them to get slaves, they literally were they started chemical warfare, right? They started chemical warfare. This is what's going on, right? So chattel slavery is being done in one part of the Americas. And remember, the original, if you don't remember, the original definition of an American is a copper-colored person who's indigenous to America or indigenous to Turtle Island. Because once again, we don't look up, law and things legally and what happened. So the original American is actually a copper-colored person who is indigenous to America. That's by definition. That's what an American was a copper-colored person. So a darker skinned person, who was indigenous to America. Right? So the Americans, the real Americans, were being enslaved. And thanks for the love, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Right? Thank you for the likes, the shares, all that stuff. For those who are becoming part of the community, we appreciate you all on all the platforms. We really do. Thank you. So that's what's going on here, is you got copper-colored people who are indigenous to America being taken from America and being enslaved. This is what's going on. This is the mindset of what they're trying to fight against. And the Wampanoag people, and now a chieftain is pretty much kind of the main chieftain, is trying to figure out how we're going to be able to fight against all these things. How are we going to be able to go against all these things? How are we going to be able to defeat this enemy that's coming against us? Because anybody who's stealing your men, women, and children, that's your enemy. Don't get it twisted. People say, oh, well, no. You're trying to do this and trying to separate. No, I'm telling you context. Like, anybody who's taking our men, women, and children, this is why anybody who's killing our men, women, and children, MMIW, bring our girls home, all these different things. Anybody who does this to my community, you are my enemy. I'm sorry if that makes you upset. Matter of fact, I don't know if I'm sorry about that. Right? If you would dare hurt my community and hurt my babies and hurt my wife and hurt my mother and hurt my sisters and hurt all these people, then you are our enemy. Now, if you would be grafted into my family and help to protect my family, then you are my friend. That's reality. And I don't care what color you are, right? That's why we teach on here, like, don't, if a white police officer shows up because a Karen called the police, like, that's what he's supposed to do. Understand that, right? Like, if a white woman, if his wife, if his children, if his daughter, somebody that represents that to him, calls on the phone and he shows up and she says, that man, doesn't matter what color that man is, that man did something to me, he's supposed to defend her. That's what he's supposed to do. Understand? That's why they have to change the narrative and shift the narrative and move the goalposts and start saying that all of us are evil. That way he shows up and doesn't even think twice. My woman is in trouble by this evil person. I got to take him out. That was done on purpose. That was put in place on purpose to cause you and I to be in the position that we're in. To cause that police officer to think that it's easy for him to do what he has to do, to pull the trigger. To make it easy for the judge to say, you know what? The young man that rapes or kills somebody that looks like me, I need to protect him. But the person that doesn't look like me, he must be evil. He must go to jail. He must be killed. Right? That was done on purpose. That was purposefully done. It was done. We like to use this term skillfully and willfully. This wasn't something that was done by accident. This isn't just a byproduct. This is done. That was something done on purpose. All right. So when you're dealing with these things, with these items, you have to be honest about it. You got to be real about it. We got to have honest conversation. All right. You got to have honest conversation. All right. So this is what's going on where these people are at their wits' end. What do we do? Now come these people that you call the Puritans, but we've got to label these people correctly. Now come these people you call Puritans, but we got to label these people correctly because they were not pure. They were not even Puritans, really. So once again, authority, right? In Christianity, you had the Roman Catholic Church, okay? The Roman Catholic Church, the King of Kings is over everybody, but something's happened since these crusades that we were talking about, and now that we're dealing with stuff now, which is you dealt with this king called King Henry VIII. That's England that we're coming into knowledge of, right? So we've talked about Spain, now we're talking about England. See, it's not just as simple as, oh, this one thing happened here in America only. No, this is a worldwide phenomena, right? So in England, you have this king, King Henry VIII, who's under the Pope. He has 6 wives, if you know about his story. 3 of his wives he killed, 3 of his wives he divorced. Well, did he divorce the last one of the 3? Or did he just die while she was there? I don't know. Nevertheless, he killed at least 2 of them, or he divorced at least 2 of them. He killed 3 of them. And every time he wanted to get remarried or kill one or whatever, he would go to the Pope. The Pope had to give him permission. The Pope had to marry him each time. That's what had to happen. So he couldn't just, so if he killed a wife and he wanted to get married again, he couldn't just go to the Pope, or he couldn't just get married and show up and say, hey, Pope, show up and marry us, right? The Pope has the authority. He's the one that's going to govern the ceremony and all that stuff. So he's the one that gets to say if you get remarried again or not. So the Pope, after a while, was tired because even though the Pope was on some wild stuff himself and was, having all these girlfriends and, having all these babies and stuff like that all over the place, he was like, you messing me up because you're making me look bad in the public. See, publicly, I look a lot different than what you look, right? So in the public, I got to make sure that I keep up certain perception. People who are rulers, you guys know what I'm doing. But the people who are, regular people and stuff, they don't know that I got all this stuff going on. I can't be attached to somebody that's just killing their wives off and having all these babies left and right and don't even take care of one of the babies. Like he didn't take care of the one that becomes Bloody Mary, who comes onto the throne later on. He ain't take care of her. He just kind of left her out there and had her younger half brother and sister out there, be in a position where they were going to get the throne and stuff like that. So that's why Queen Mary, she comes back with a vengeance later on. Right? So the Pope is like, I can't have you out here making me look like I'm attached to this mess with this foolishness. You're not supposed to just be killing wives off like that. I'm sorry, I can't let you get married again. So King Henry, he leaves and he becomes the Pope of his own church. You call it Protestantism. Every Protestant falls under the line of whoever the Queen or King of England is. That's who your Pope is. That's where that came from. Protestantism wasn't just some righteous thing that people decided to do. Protestantism was there was a king that wanted to make sure that he kept messing with his, messing around with women the way he was and killing them off and divorcing them. The Pope wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do, so he said, I'll become the Pope. Right? So now you have this Pope who's on his own, who has his own set of slaves and stuff like that, and doing his own stuff in the kingdom. All right. So now let's fast forward a little bit. We catch up to what we're talking about, where all these people have been coming to the coast. Now, where do you think these people that were coming to the coast to make slaves were coming from? Right? Not just Europe. Right? No, I'm not Catholic. No, I'm not Roman Catholic. I'm not Christian. Nevertheless, right? Why? I'm not Muslim either. Right? I'm into the truth, but hear what I'm saying. So, where do these people come from? Where were these people coming from that were making slaves? If they're coming from Europe, what places are they coming from? They're coming from England? Yes. They're coming from Portugal? Yes. They're coming from Spain? Yes. A little bit of France? Yeah. People are coming from all over the place to get this slave labor. See, we think of the first slaves as having to be African, and even though we could say there's a mix of these people, African and what we call indigenous here and African over here, at the end of the day, these people are the same people, same skin color, and they're looked at as far as they're concerned. They're all Negro, even though Negro was a West African term. But as far as they're concerned, they're all Negro. And then they start saying they're all Indian because Christopher Columbus lied and said he was coming to India. Remember, he was sent here on purpose. They knew where he was going. It was a lie that was put there on purpose. He wrote it in his journal. They knew when they showed up that they weren't in India. Heck, they knew where India was. They knew that India was considered to be in the East. They knew where India was. They knew Indian kings. They knew how India rolled. So if they wanted to go to India, all you had to do was just go east. Why would you go west to go east? Now they're trying to tell you, well, we're trying to go around the whole thing. But we know that back in the times of Greece, that Greeks and Romans talked about China. So it was already known where China was. Right? They already knew about Japan. They didn't really know Japan, but they had heard about it. People that came together and passed on knowledge one to the other. Right? Saint Maurice, you talking about the saint, the one that they have that they usually have in the chain metal and stuff like that has like the I don't know if he's got the broken nose, but he's got some chips around his face, stuff like that. Yes, and that can be proof, evidence of people knowing about different places too. Our focus though is Thanksgiving today, so I'm not trying to be rude, just trying to say I'm with you, but I'm not going to focus in that area, at least not yet. So you have people coming over from these places. One of the reasons we know about this is because of a gentleman named Tisquantum. The gentleman named Tisquantum, his name is, you know him as Squanto. That's how you heard about him. You didn't know about his name was Tisquantum because they didn't care about his real name. You didn't know about Tisquantum, but you heard about Squanto, right? You said you thought Thanksgiving is about pilgrims and Native Americans. Okay, so once again, that's what I'm talking about. But nevertheless, Squanto, maybe you haven't been on the whole time, I don't know. But Squanto, he was able to speak English. Now, there was another native that spoke to the people who came over that could speak English before Squanto. But Squanto was the second person they met that could speak English. Now, they teach you in school. They even taught this in school. When I was coming to school, they would teach that this was a miracle by God. God himself had allowed Squanto to come into existence. Right? That's what they taught. But Squanto, if you look up Squanto's history, Squanto was a slave. 7 years before everything happened with Thanksgiving and everything, Squanto was a slave. Squanto, his family was killed off, his tribe was killed off. He was taken to Spain first, then he was sold from a Spanish family to an English family. He learned Spanish and English, and then he came back. And when he came back, he found out that there was nothing left of his tribe. He found out that his family had been killed, and he really had been messed up in the brain. He was a Sambo at that point. If we just be honest, he was a Sambo at that point, what we would consider a Sambo. Some of you know it as an Uncle Tom, but Uncle Tom is the hero. Sambo is the one that you need to be worried about. So he was a Sambo at that point, and Sambo. Well, I don't understand. Okay, I guess. If you don't want to be on, I don't know. Anyways, Sambo was somebody who was on as far as, or I'm sorry, not Sambo, but Squanto was somebody that the Wampanoag tribe and the chieftain did not even, they didn't trust him because they knew he had been gone for a while, and they knew the way that he acted. He didn't act the same, like something was off with him. Something wasn't quite, culturally appropriate with him anymore. And so they didn't trust him, but they knew that he could speak English, and they needed people who were going to be, because they were dealing with enemies on both sides. So if they needed to trade or talk to people or whatever, they needed somebody who could speak. So they kept him around. They allowed him to come into the tribe. Right? So So when he comes back, it's my pleasure, thank you. So when he comes into the tribe or whatever, that's supposed to be his gig. So if we put a pause there real quick, we have to comprehend this is what the political tension is of the civilization that's already going on. People think that civilization means something different. Civilization is what your culture makes of it. That's why it's anybody considered to be uncivilized. All it means is you don't fit into somebody else's culture. That's all it is. So if somebody calls you a savage, for example, a savage means you don't fit in to somebody else's culture. That's it. Sauvage means wild, en français or in French, right? So you're just talking about somebody who doesn't fit into your culture. Okay, so you're not domesticated. That's what that means. So when basically you're dealing with the Pilgrims, or you're dealing with the Puritans, different names they're called, you have to once again understand authority. Let's go back to where I was talking about. Let's put a pin in where I am, and let's come here real quick. Authority. When we're talking about authority, you have to talk about the Roman Catholic Church again. So the Roman Catholic Church, we talked about that. It goes to the Protestant Church, the Protestants, right? So now you got a Protestant king and Protestant kingdom, and what happens is that you have these people called Puritans. Puritans are people who are calling for reform. So the Roman Catholic Church, King Henry wanted to be the Pope of his own religion so that he could marry who he wanted to marry. So he starts Protestantism. There are Puritans that come out as a result that say that we are anti this Protestantism, right? So we have Puritans who are coming out saying we're anti-Protestantism. In other words, we need reform, right? Maybe not. Maybe some of us might think we might kind of sort of need to be Roman Catholic, but not really. Some of us might think we need to not be Roman Catholic, but we definitely don't need to be Protestant, but we need some kind of reform. The Puritan becomes a reformist, right? And the reformist, or this Puritan, is somebody that the king can't stand. So the king actually makes a decree and says that basically if you're a Puritan, right, freedom of religion stuff and everything, they're trying to get free of Roman Catholicism, but they turn around and say, what, no freedom of religion for you. Puritans, you all got to be locked up, or you're supposed to be killed, or you have to leave the country. And then there were some people that out of that comes something even deeper, which is who really came to the Americas. They're called separatists. So you had Roman Catholics, you had out of that Protestantism comes, out of Protestantism comes the Puritans, and out of the Puritans come the separatists. Separatists said we need to separate from all this mess. Separatists are people that were like, all of y'all are evil. None of you guys are out here doing things. None of you are as righteous as us. We're going to separate. And it was right on time because they needed to separate when the king came looking for them. So they separated. They left over to Dutch lands, to the Deutsch. And they went over there. They were there for about 100 years. The Deutsch started infiltrating their society, as far as that's what they felt. The Deutsch basically were around them. They lived in their Deutsch territory, so their children started speaking Deutsch or Dutch. Their children started acting like them, wearing their clothes. People wanted to marry into them, and for fear that the separatists were going to be infiltrated and lose their way, they came back to England and came before the king and said, hey, king, please let us go over to America. That's what happened. And hey, babe, my wife is on, the Honorable Bloom and Flourish. Thanks for being on. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, and her website, not Bloom A-N-D Flourish, but Bloom and Flourish, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. And remember, the herb for the tincture for the month, rather, is ginkgo. But she has many different tinctures. Thanks for being on. I'm sorry, babe. Thanks for being on. I love you very much. I appreciate your presence here and everything that you do for our community. So you have these. So now you have this territory, right? And this territory basically is doing what? I'm sorry. You have these people, these separatists, who now need a new territory. So the king, because they don't have space in their prisons, right? Because you have to understand, prison, you have to pay money to stay in prison. Just like today, you have to pay money to stay in prison. That's why you got to be a slave and you got to work. And if you don't work, they put you in a hole. And once you get out, you can't get SSI or anything, and because you owe money, right? So everything you make is going to go back to the prison system first. And then once you pay them off for your time, right, while they were already being paid by the government, but once you pay them off as well, then you get to finally maybe at some point in your life start making a little chump change again, right? Well, it was the same thing in England, but they didn't have enough space. They were killing people off so much. They were killing off in England. They were killing off 7-year-olds at that point, because they were trying to make an example. Any criminal, any kind of crime, they wanted you to be afraid of because they didn't have space in their prisons anymore. They didn't have a prison system like they do now. So they were sending people to Australia, to India, to the West Indies, and they were sending people over to the Americas, or what we know as the United States of America, mainly Canada and the United States of America, we would call it nowadays. So they send these people, they send these people all the way over. These separatists. The separatists had separated from the Puritans. The Puritans weren't good enough for the separatists. That's what's going on. That's who's coming over. And by the way, they're sending them with criminals too. The separatists are considered to be criminals, and so are the people that are on the ship. So it's not just separatists that came over by themselves. They also came over with criminals. It was criminals being sent worldwide because England, while doing criminal activity, also didn't have enough space for the people that were so criminal that the criminals couldn't handle them. Right? If you catch what I'm saying. So they're sending them all over the place. They're sending them all over the place, trying to get them out, trying to say, hey, we need to make sure that we, get rid of this stuff, get this stuff off our books. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, so here come the separatists, and the separatists come over, right, with these criminals as well, and they get right back into criminal behavior, trying to take over somebody else's land and trying to have slaves. And what they come across when they get here is a territory that they see as war-torn, where these Wampanoag people can't really defend themselves the way they would like to. And then they see people that speak English. And they meet the second person who speaks English, who is Tisquantum. Now we're back where we put that pen in. Let's take that pen out and let's keep on going. So now we come across Squanto, or Tisquantum. Tisquantum is a Sambo at this point. Tisquantum he has nothing to really keep him from going full Sambo anymore because his wife and his children are gone. They've been wiped out by people who he believes to be superior to him now, because that's what he's been taught for several years. Right? So now that it sees these white people again, he makes a deal with them behind the scenes. Right? That's not known about yet, but that will be found out later by the chieftain. He makes this deal behind the scenes. The deal behind the scenes goes like this. Hey, check this out. I will help you to enslave these people as long as you allow me to be a slave master as well and a slave owner as well. That's the deal that was made behind the scenes. A lot of people don't know that. Shalom, angelic discipline, how you doing? So a lot of people are not aware of that. That becomes the deal behind the scenes. Is I will help you eviscerate my people. Or really, I don't consider them my people, even though they're my cousins, but I don't consider them my people because my tribe got killed off. So I don't really have anything left. I've gone over. I feel like you guys are superior. I know how this goes. They're going to all have to bow down at some point to you anyways. I know why you're here. You're here to make slaves. I'll help you make the slaves as long as you allow me to have some slaves. Right? That's what happened. So now, here he comes and helping them. Right now, but the Wampanoag chieftain, he didn't trust him, so he actually sent another person to watch over him to make sure that he didn't do anything, crazy. So the chieftain is aware that something's off with I'm sorry, I'm about to call him Sambo, with Squanto, even though. So the chieftain's aware something's off with Squanto. He doesn't know quite what it's going to lead to, but he doesn't trust him. He definitely doesn't trust the Puritans. Now, here's where we get to, so Squanto starts teaching them how to farm and how to do things that they do and how to use the land and how to survive, because they got to a place where they're eating each other and doing all types of crazy stuff, and they're dying off and they're dealing with sickness, and they are already dealing with disease, so they don't want any more disease, even though they've learned how to eat better to fight the disease, but they don't want to deal with these things. I'm sorry, my wife said people knew their history, so they pulled on that to create systems we have now. Yeah, amen. So now that they know this, watch this. So they have this feast. Now we think of it as a feast. Really, it was a treaty signing. They come together to sign a treaty, and they eat. They need to eat and make sure people do this. So the natives bring food. right? The separatists, who you call Puritans, they didn't bring any food. It was the natives who brought food. There were about at least 200 men. It wasn't men, women, and children, right? When people try to do all this, matter of fact, in some of the pictures, you don't even see them show native women and children, right? But because they're telling the truth, that it was only men that showed up. Why was it only men in the native side that showed up? And really, it wasn't been too many women and children that showed up on the opposite side either, because they were signing a treaty, right? So you had it was 200 plus warriors that showed up, right? It was 200 warriors that showed up. All right. So when 200 warriors showed up, they showed up ready if they needed to fight. They showed up with enough food to feed themselves, right? And they made sure that for, I think it's at least 3 days, they sat down and went over this treaty. So it wasn't a feast of peace. This wasn't a Thanksgiving. Matter of fact, it wasn't even called Thanksgiving. Remember, Thanksgiving comes from something else that means to be able to fast, right? But it wasn't a time of fasting. It was a time when they had food prepared because they were getting ready to go into the discussions on a treaty, right? And the treaty was supposed to say that we will allow people to be able to. The treaty was there to say that we allow. What we'll allow, what we won't allow, where you guys can go, we're allowed to stay here. If anybody attacks or does this, what the chief has power over, what the governor has power over. And matter of fact, the people who were the separatists, or the separatists, and think about even like some of these things that you hear in Star Wars and different things like that, and confederations and all that, all the native tribes, they were confederations. And you had the separatists. The separatists were people who used to be pilgrims. So people are playing on this stuff in front of you. We don't even think about where this stuff comes from. They're not making this stuff up in movies. They're just using pieces of the story to try and make it sound like it's something that you should be for or against, or it doesn't matter which side because they're both the same. No, the separatists were very clearly coming with a mindset to take over what somebody else did, and anybody that didn't believe in what they believed in. Matter of fact, I want you to think about the fact that the separatists came from the Dutch. They lived with the Dutch, and they took a Dutch mentality somewhat with them when they left. Now, who over here still to this day says that if you don't agree with what we believe in, that you're English, you're evil, you're not one of us, right? That's who would that be? The separatists. You got a separatist Dutch connection. You got separatists who went over with the Dutch. Then all of a sudden the Dutch, they felt they were becoming too Dutch, right? But they didn't want to be English either. They asked the English king for permission to get away from all that. And they came over here. And so now in their mind, anybody who didn't match up with them, which the natives definitely didn't, guess what? They need to be separated from them. They need to consider them to be too English, too separate, or too even Roman Catholic, whatever it is that thing you want to put on it. And so that's where we get to now, where you're dealing with the same mindset. And these people came over specifically to make slaves. That was part of what they were coming over to do. And if you didn't believe and agree with what they said, then they killed you off, right? And if you don't believe that much of it, right, this is having been led as we believe. If that still is something where you say, I won't listen to it, even though this is stuff that you could just straight up read, right? Like, I'm not coming out of anything that you can't read. You can watch YouTube videos on it. If you don't like to read, you can go get audiobooks. You can question everything I'm saying. You can look at people, watch this, read people who will totally disagree with me, whose disagreement just starts and ends here, or their proof starts and ends here. Well, even if that's the case, it doesn't matter, because, well, if that's your proof, then that's it, right? Nevertheless, though, if you keep looking at this stuff, now keep on going, because you got to comprehend this becomes an issue, because now here come the British, remember, or the English. Actually, at that time, they would have been the British too. Here come the English or the British. After all this stuff is done, and you're going to see more separatists start coming over, and then Puritans are going to start coming over, because people realize, oh, okay, they've learned how to survive over here. They made it safe because they killed off these people over here, and now we're sending even more criminals. Now it's not just criminals. Now other people are like, well, maybe I can try and make it over here in this new world. And now, what are we going to start doing? Now the British come over and they make it a colony. It was never a British colony, right? It was separatist colonies. Then it became Puritan colonies again, even though the separatists didn't like the Puritans. And then when the British come over, that's when they start bringing stuff back over, like Christmas and other things that we've talked about before, which was outlawed because the separatists didn't like Christmas because they knew what it was. Right? So now you start seeing people come over. Now you start seeing things come over. Now you start hearing certain proclamations and things come over. And you have a fight now that's dealing with chattel slavery versus capitalism, because capitalism is becoming big in Europe. People want to bring it over, but you got chattel slavery. Now, capitalists still want there to be slaves, but they don't want them to be chattel slaves. At least they don't need them to be chattel slaves. They need these people to be on the bottom due to losing a competition, a fake competition. Yes, the United States is a corporation. That's why we talked about it over and over again, right? And we even talked about that multiple times already. So definitely with you on that. That's why we teach that definitely as far as in sovereignty classes and things like that we give out, right? And classes on monarchy, classes on all that. So we understand where capitalism comes from and all that, and corporations and where corporations originally came from. Nevertheless, we're talking about Thanksgiving, right? This thing where all these things that come on here that are attached to this. All these mindsets, all these things. This is why division sits down at your table every Thanksgiving, that people say we're so united, but leading up to Thanksgiving, everybody's going to argue about all this stuff, all this political, what were we calling it earlier? All this political kindling is going to come to this fire called Thanksgiving, where people are going to keep talking about it as a Republican or Democrat thing. You got to have competition in it, all these different things. Understand and comprehend all these different things, because you're dealing with what? You're dealing with all this cultural or non-cultural or cultural misappropriation or whatever that comes together, and all these laws that are faux laws, fake laws, that are there because they have no right to that have no right to be there. Right? So now here you go. You're dealing with all this. Now check out what happens. So now this is what happens. This is how the colony of America is formed. And once again, what was an original America? It was not the country of America. It was the colonies, these British colonies in America, which, by the way, were not just the 13. Right? Don't forget that the colonies went all the way up into Canada. All right. That's why the Canadians have the same type of history with black people and with Native people, or if it really one and the same, but sometimes people want them to be separated, fine. And Mexican people and Irish people, they had the same connection. They had the same history to this stuff as the United States of America does, because they came from the same place. Don't forget, Spain is where had his hand on Florida and stuff like that. Don't forget, France had everything up the Louisiana Purchase, right? Don't forget, like these, don't forget Portugal was here for a little bit. Don't forget, way before all that stuff I'm talking about, China was over here. China was in Russia. Don't forget Russia was over here, because Russia went down into California too. So you're speaking on so many different things and so many different cultures, right? So what we're trying to do, what the Amish people did right now when we get our land together in the Yaz Land Project 83. So I'm not sure how much I would talk about that right now, because I need some of it. I want to remain private anyways. Nevertheless, I'm still doing some research on that, so I'm not 100% ready to talk about that. Nevertheless, though, so now what happens? This colony, so a colony of America is different than the country of America, right? Because a colony means we're colonizing the people of America. Remember what the original definition of an American is. The original definition of an American is what? A black or copper-colored person who is indigenous to America or to Turtle Island. So they would not become Americans until they said, we'll make ourselves the Americans. But in 1712, that's when you get Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch is still talking to English people, to Englishmen, to British people who are dealing with slavery. But capitalism is becoming a fight, and some people want to remember, chattel slavery is happening in Massachusetts. That's where they were bringing them anyways, right, in the beginning. But you got it in Massachusetts, you have it in New York, Wall Street. Don't forget that Wall Street, there used to be a wall there, and you would bury all the slaves on one side of the wall. And don't forget, like when it came to the trade and stuff like that, stock exchange, well, that becomes from the place to where the black person was considered to be stock, right? They were good stock or bad stock, and then you paid a bond for that person. Right? And they were bound, but you had a bond for that person. So if that person was excellent stock, then you said, okay, I'll pay this much for the stock or whatever. That becomes your bond. You have a bond paper. And when your slave died, you buried him on the other side of Wall Street, and they would only allow, what was it, like 10 to 20 people to come to a funeral. If a black person died, only 10, 20 people would come, because they were so afraid, because there were so many people that fought against slavery. Right? You call them slave rebellions or whatever, but there were so many of them going on, they were afraid. So they would just only allow 10 to 20 people to show up. Right, all this stuff shows up at the Thanksgiving table, right? Like, people don't want to talk about this stuff, but keep on going. This is how it affects your stuff. Keep on going, because now that we have these things going, there's a war against capital, or there's a war where capitalism is fighting against chattel slavery. People who make the most money in chattel slavery are obviously the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Somebody mentioned the movie Django earlier. When you look at Django, Monsieur Candy, right? The guy who wants to be called Mr. Candy. He is 1% of the 1%, 1%. Like, a lot of white people work for him. He does a lot of business with a lot of white people. He employs a lot of white people. He lets a lot of white people who have their own personal business and stuff flourish and stuff because of what he has. But he is a 1%er of the 1%ers, is the 1%ers of the 1%ers, right? So you have that coming on, and capitalism says we need competition where we'll still have 1%ers, but we need to have people have a sense of freedom so that they can still be on the bottom. We'll still have the 13th Amendment that allows you to be locked up and become a slave. We'll still have the 14th Amendment that says that you belong to a corporation. That happens in 1866, but then they make it official with the Second Constitution in 1871. We'll still do all those things, but we want capital, he who or she who has the most capital, to be king or queen, and we want everybody to believe that they can. That's the American dream. Anybody can become rich. This set up for everybody. Every woman, there's no such thing as women are not on the bottom, even though they can't vote, right? But there's no such thing as women on the bottom, even though we don't like them reading. There's no such thing as women on the bottom, even though we don't want them to go to university. There's no such thing as women on the bottom, even though women aren't supposed to make more money than men. And so if she marries a man, he's supposed to have access to every single thing that she's ever made, right from the jump. Right? But this is what they're teaching across the board. It's about capitalism. Let capitalism be it. So the war was capitalism against slavery. That's why you had the war of 1776. If you don't believe it, look it up for yourself. There's a king, one of the kings, and forgive me, it's not King George, but before King George, there's an English king who signs a treaty with all the Native Americans, at least all of them that he can meet, right? He doesn't meet personally, but all of the ones that will meet up, they sign a treaty that says that everything that goes outside of his territories, his colonies, is off limits. So they're not supposed, basically, I think it's the Appalachian Mountains, right? So if you're on the east side of the Appalachian Mountains, then look, that's the colonies we have rulership over, but we're not going to extend ourselves any further west than those colonies. Oh, thanks, babe. Oh, okay. My wife made milk thistle. What's milk thistle good for again?
Well, for your liver, first of all, people drink it for liver health, but it also decalcifies your pineal gland.
Okay. She's whispering sound here, but basically milk thistle is good. I asked her, she wasn't prepared, but basically milk thistle is good for the liver and good for the pineal gland as well. So, thank you, babe. I appreciate it. So, good for stuff like that if you're looking for things about your detox, also pineal gland, reset yourself, all those great things. So check this out. So, where were we at? Speaking of the pineal gland. Okay, amen. So we're in a position where now we see that there's a treaty that's signed that says that England will not mess with anything else. Britain will not mess with anything else past the Appalachian Mountains. Right? Right? So that's the treaty. We're not going to mess with anything else, but there's a war going on because we need to make more slaves. What's wrong with you, King? We need to make more slaves. That's the argument that starts. Right? Now this argument keeps on moving. How does this argument keep on moving? Because now you get to this thing called the Declaration of Independence, 1776, and you see a Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party, they start saying stuff, and they started saying it at the meetings they were having, in Philadelphia and other places that they were hiding, in Baltimore, and other places that they were hiding, where they were having, what you call the founding fathers come together, who were fighting for freedom. These founding fathers didn't like the fact that Britain was taxing them. That's the story that you guys get. It's only about tax. But Britain had never taxed them before. Interestingly enough, England had just for the first time said, hey, we're having a 7 Years' War and all this stuff. It's messing us over. Or not the 7 Years' War. Let me make sure. They're basically having a world war. I forget what their name for it is, but they're having a world war. And on all fronts, all their commander-in-chiefs and everything, they're having a hard time. So they're saying, hey, we need to have you guys pay. For the first time ever. They did it for the places that were up in Canada too. They did it for a whole bunch of people. Hey, you haven't necessarily had to pay taxes. Well, we need you guys to start paying taxes to help out, because they didn't have police officers. They had militia kind of, sort of, but they didn't really have police officers. So it was, even the English army had to police everybody. So They're like, you need to pay for this. Help us to pay for this. So you've been told that this whole thing was taxation without representation. But check it out. When you see the Declaration of Independence, they start talking about the savage. When you see the Constitution, they start talking about the savage. They start talking about the bond and the free. They don't use, so people will say, oh, nowhere in the Constitution does it say anything about slave. Yeah, it does. It's talking about the bond. Who is the bond? Not the bound, the bond. Remember Wall Street. Remember bonds, right? Remember stocks and bonds. Who is the stock that would be the bond? Who would be the person that you don't even refer to as a person? You refer to as property, as ownership, as a value, and nothing else as far as what they are as your property, the bond. That's who you're dealing with, is the bond, right? So that's what the war was about, ladies and gentlemen. And forgive me for using the term gentleman. I don't really like using gentleman anymore, because gentleman is what Willie Lynch referred to as his friends for him. Willie Lynch's friends are not my friends, and they're not gentle, and they don't have, the right man or the right spirit, so to speak, in them. Nevertheless, this is what the bond was. You said, so the progress, yeah, is cursed. Yeah, exactly. Because people keep talking about progress. That's a great way of saying it. The progress is cursed, right? Because at the end of the day, is it progress to where people are still being hung from trees, and we still say, well, an 80-year-old woman, she just randomly hung herself from a tree, lifted herself up, put herself on there? Is it still progress when children are committing, the S word, suicide? I used to say the S word. My son's not up yet. Is it these are things that are still, we're still affected by these things. Is it progress when people are still marching because and setting things on fire sometimes, whether it was always BLM people or not? Because we know that usually it's turned out that it was people that were anti-BLM that were doing some of this stuff too. But even if it was them, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. decades ago taught us and spoke on the fact that that's the language of the oppressed. That rioting is the language of the oppressed. They kept asking you for something and you would have given to them, so they made sure they spoke it in a way that you could hear. And what did you do? Rather than say, we'll sit down and listen to you, you said, we're just going to go ahead and make things more difficult. We're going to sick the military on you now. We could have just sat down and had a meeting with you and said, hey, look, we see what you did. We look the other way for our people all the time. We can look the other way as long as you don't do it. But in order for us to not do it, we'll do these things to make sure that we meet you somewhere down the middle. Nope. We're going to lock you up. And we're going to make you look bad. We're going to hit you with that Dave Chappelle. We're not going to pay you what your worth is, and then we're going to say that you're a crackhead. Same type of mentality. We're going to tell everybody that you're evil and you're vile for asking for what, I don't ask for equality because no two people are equal. Nevertheless, for asking to be treated like a human being, we're going to say that you're the one that's out of pocket. These are the things that are going on constantly and consistently. So here we are dealing with this stuff. So 1776 is a Declaration of Independence from England, because England is saying that we signed this treaty and that we're not going to let you go any further than this, and we're going to use capitalism now within everybody who's in here. They say, nope, we're not about capitalism, and we need to keep stretching over further, right? We need to go into certain territory. I mean, when England signed that document, right, understand that they put a hamper on places like Virginia, right, and places like Carolina. Remember, Virginia was bigger than what it is now. West Virginia and Virginia. Carolina was bigger back then. North Carolina, South Carolina were one. And you had places that were already going over into the West, and were already enslaving people and bringing them back. And were already colonizing people over there, not in the name of England, but in the name of themselves. And so when England does this stuff, like you messing us up. You're messing us up. So they fought a war. Where it was more important to make sure that they kept slaves. And then if you keep on moving, you go to a place where 1812, England says you didn't have the right to be able to do what you did to us. We're coming back and we're going to take what's ours, and we're going to make sure we uphold the treaty, and we're going to fight using native people. We're going to have native people who know that there was supposed to be a treaty in place. They're going to be our allies. Right? America, now the people who call themselves Americans, they killed off the Wampanoag people and people of Massachusetts and all those places, and then they said, now we're the Americans. We're going to do the Boston Tea Party thing, put on blackface and throw a bunch of tea over and say that now we're the people who are the Americans after we killed you off. Because remember, the original American was a black or a copper colored person indigenous to Turtle Island. So we're going to just go ahead and get rid of that. We're going to throw you out, and then we're going to say we're you. And then they fought. They won the War of 1812, but now here comes another war that's continued to be the same fight. Here comes a war. Before I get to the Civil War, you got to talk about the Kansas Wars. Now, why are the Kansas Wars important? The Kansas Wars are important because that's where the Civil War was already happening anyways. The Kansas Wars were wars that basically people, like what used to happen in making a new state, when America, or when the people who now are the modern Americans, who took over for the people who were the actual Americans, when they were fighting against each other as far as what states were free and what states were slave. That's what they called them, free states, slave states. Free didn't mean free. Free just meant you were underneath the hand of capitalism, but you could still be enslaved. Slave meant that you were just, everything was based off of chattel slavery. So depending on what state was going to become what they did was they'd have a territory, and then the territory came together. So in this case, it'd be Kansas. And they would send people to fight in each place because you had to reach a certain number. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head. Let's say the number is 10,000. So in order for your place to become a state, you had to have 10,000 people in the state. So you would get it to where people that were into capitalism, the North, would send, a whole bunch of people over there. And people that were into chattel slavery, the South, they would send a whole bunch of people over there. And by the way, there were people into capitalism down south, and there were people into chattel slavery in the north. That's why people in Maryland had to be paid reparations by Abraham Lincoln to let their slaves go. So you had to have all that stuff coming into being. So you had these Kansas Wars that are going on. And in the Kansas Wars, here we go. Kansas Wars are people fighting to see who's going to win, how many people are going to be around, etc., who's going to have the most, so that Kansas could be a slave state or a free state or a capitalism state. Okay, and so finally, stuff like that, tensions have been building up to where now you get this civil war where the people who say they're the modern day Americans are now trying to fight against people who say they're the modern day Confederates. Remember, Confederacy legally is the only Confederates that have ever legally existed are native tribes. Native tribes were known as confederacies. So here come people in the South saying that now we're the natives and we're going to fight against these Americans who say now we're the natives. Right? And you had this continued war and stuff. So all this stuff was about enslaving natives and saying that you are the true native. That's what the whole thing was about. So when you sit down for Thanksgiving and you see all this stuff and you hear people talking about stuff, whether it's from what you would call religious belief or whether it's talking about coming from a position of just saying that it's evil that's happened or things like that, that's the fight. That's what the fight is really about. It's been about natives or black people or copper-colored people or whatever being allowed to be enslaved. That's what the whole thing's been about. That's what Thanksgiving is about. So that's why when we say having been led as we believe, that's why we don't celebrate Thanksgiving. There you go. So I'm going to try and catch up on some of these questions and answers. I know I haven't done it in a while, but it was becoming a little too difficult because when you talk about this, I know a lot of people want to go a lot of different ways, but I'm going to try my best to catch up on whatever I can. It'll probably limit me as far as I can go back, so I apologize. If you want to restate your question, if you want to put it in the question mark box to make sure I get to it, I will definitely get to it. Right? Yeah, amen, angelic discipline, the 7 great nations. All right, so here we go. Let me try and go back as far as it'll let me go back. I'm not sure where I left off. So Grand Rising, was it to Tarla Lachey, I believe? Thanks for being part of the community, Maurice. So, okay, somebody said their family were Puritans. I think I read that. The Roman version of Halloween. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, I read some of these things. It said 15,000, you are being monitored and trolled. Be careful, bro. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is the third. This is why it's Kofi_43. This is the third TikTok page. So we're growing at a great rate, at a faster rate than what we did before. But we've touched millions of people on multiple platforms already. So we're just simply going back to the same thing. Thank you, Deep Digging. I appreciate, I get what you're saying. Is it Tyra Simone? Thanks for being on. Blumen, thanks for being on. Breezy Mama says so much information, definitely going to read on it. Yeah, hey, shalom, Metal Melter, how you doing? So can I speak on? Okay, so I skipped over that a little bit. So yeah, the Amish community thing, I'm gonna save off on. And honestly, this is a series we're doing, so I'm doing some study and some research. There's a lot of stuff I was actually reading and getting into this rising, and I just didn't. I wouldn't say I'm competent enough to speak thoroughly and completely on it. I don't like to give opinion, and when I get to a place where I might be doing opinion, You know what I'm saying? I'm, but also too, we do want to keep it a little private. What chosen one said, thank you for speaking. Oh, I appreciate that. Treat says, this is my first time hearing any of this. Yeah, a lot of people, some people don't know at all, right? But this is what sits down at your table at Thanksgiving. This is why you have a lot of the issues that you have, and this is why people have to be understand when we talk about natives, when we talk about blacks, you also have to comprehend you're talking about white people as well, because the 13th Amendment says that you can be enslaved just because you're in prison. So anybody of any color that goes to prison. Now, are we still disproportionately in prison? Sure. However, anybody that's in prison, anybody that's part of a corporation rather than being private instead of being public, right? Or anybody who's public rather. The government's over control of you. You fall into that category somewhat, because if you're going off your birth certificate and stuff, your birth certificate says you belong to a place that's allowed to imprison you. That's why you pay taxes and stuff like that. Nevertheless, when we're talking about this stuff, we're talking about everybody. And that's something that a lot of people don't get. We're talking about everybody. You said, why is everything like this? Once again, it comes to a pneumatical thought process. That's Stoic thought that marries the spirit, the soul, and the body together. This is something that was done on purpose to allow certain people to be in positions of power. And until we're honest about that, we're going to be in the same place. Hey, Grand Rising Lolo, thanks for being back on. It's not milk; it's milk thistle. So milk thistle is a herb. That you can use to be able to make sure. So my wife just made some tea out of it, and it's something that heals, basically, and it's definitely going to help with the pineal gland. Thanks for being on, Steve Madden. Thank you, Deep Digging. I appreciate that. I definitely do. As far as I'm concerned, I got the greatest woman to ever exist on the planet. Thanks, Not a Guru. I appreciate that. The Shima, I see the agreement. Thank you very much. You said killing gentlemen too. I'm just saying, I don't like the term. I used to use it all the time. So it still pops out. But once I found out who gentlemen were, or at least people who called themselves gentlemen, I just can't. It's kind of gross when I hear it now. Manuel says, you always talk great. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for being on. Thank you for the compliment. Appreciate that. Is it I am a loot box? Says, my people never have a communal spirit. It's always us over everyone else first. Wow. I mean, that's a powerful statement. But it comes from a mindset. And for those who are on the podcast, we might, we're not too long before I'm going to get ready to take my leave anyways, I believe. However, thank you all for being on the podcast. We only get a limited amount of time to do the live sessions on the podcast. So we thank you and we appreciate you, and we hope to see you guys see you guys soon, or hear from you guys soon. Again, Ms. Siso says absolutely correct. Thank you very much. Correcto. Abdul says love your content and truth. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Oh, brother Kenyatta, what's up, sir? How you doing? Yeah, actually gonna have to contact you all. We were gonna try and be in your guys' area for a little longer and try to do something maybe around the end of December. We might have to push that to January, but definitely gonna try and get in contact with you again soon. You said felons lose the right to vote. Is this because they are now considered slaves? Yeah. First of all, understand anything that's a right or a privilege is considered to be a right or privilege is taxable. Anything that's taxable means you're in debt. Anybody that's in debt, it means you're a slave. So understand there's house slaves, right? There's house Negroes and there's field Negroes. There's house slaves, there's field slaves. There's different levels to slavery. So the thing that people don't comprehend is you should think about how the prisoner is treated, because you and the prisoner are both slaves under this corporation of the United States anyways. So they need to get out of a system. You need to get out of a system. Nevertheless, they can take whatever they want. Really, it's because not even that, your name is put on it. They make a person that goes to prison, the state pen, whatever, jail, etc. They make that person sign a contract. So once you sign a contract, you're signing your life away, right? And a lot of people don't even know, hey, at least put without privilege above your signature, with it, at least put UCC 1-308. So when you come before the judge the next time, when you try to go back to court yourself to be able to represent yourself, you can say, hey, they have me try to sign something, but I reserve my rights as a human being. But those are things that we're not really taught about. Denise says, shalom, everyone. Have a blessed day. Same to you, Denise. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for that. Thanks for the agreement, Christine. And so, yeah, let me get to this question mark box. Some people might not. It says there's questions in the question mark box, but I can't see any. So I apologize. If you had a question in there, it's telling me that there's questions. Then I can't see them, though. So I don't know. Sometimes it lets me go back a little later and they'll pop up. So forgive me if I can't see them right now. But yeah, that is slavery. So you said, so we are a nation of slaves. Wow, that's powerful. Very much so. And that's why people don't want to talk about slavery, right? Or people have been taught to have such a fear against slavery. It's not because of black or white. They don't want you to comprehend that was practiced on black people, practiced on Irish people, practiced on Yashreel, practiced on natives, practiced on the Khalifa people, right? Or people of Kali. Matter of fact, they'll even tell you these people are mythical. You say Wampanoag, people act like because they don't know about this mythical. You say Kali, because somebody didn't see a white man write about it till 1500, they say that it's mythical or something that was just made up in the story. But then let them say the city of Troy, right? And all of a sudden, oh, we need to look for evidence of this. Right? However, they want you to believe this stuff is not important, because if you can't see the importance, then you don't see how you're being controlled. Remember, we talked about this, that on one of the lives recently, that basically self-control is important. Matter of fact, on Shabbat Shalom on the podcast, we talked about self-control is self-control leads to demand, because self-control is in demand, which means that people need people who can control themselves and have control of their cultures and aware of who they are. We did self-control. Second point was self-control is on demand. You need to be able to study your craft and study your calling to the point to where you can bring this stuff out whenever, however, on demand. And then self-control requires demand. You can start making demands of people when you have control of yourself and know who you are and know how law works for you and know that these are public servants and they serve you and you're supposed to serve your benefits, right? And so if you take the ability of someone to know themselves, right, know thyself is powerful. If you take away self from self-control, only thing you're left with is control. And that's what a lot of people are left with. He says, so then everyone can get reparations from the government. Okay, sure. What are your reparations for? What are your reparations for? Right? Repair. The word pair means preparation. So re-prepare yourself. So what is it that you need to be re-prepared for? What is it that your ancestors lost? How much, if you're talking about reparations, sure, I believe everybody should get reparations from somebody. So question, what are your reparations that you're looking for? How many years did your family make sure they were picking cotton and weren't paid for it? How many of your people were hung from trees and there were laws? People don't comprehend. That's why you got to look at laws and stuff and study things. That and I keep forgetting the name of it. Forgive me, but there's a law out there that says that you can kill a slave, and as long as you kill them in discipline, which can be a wide variety of things, you can put it under a huge umbrella, right? But if you kill a slave, it's okay to kill a slave. Why did they put that in the law? They put that in the law because white women were tired of seeing half black and half white babies running around because their husbands were cheating and having sex with these people that were supposed to be less than animals and not even human beings, but they kept having babies with them, and these children began getting older and they started seeing their husbands' faces in these children, so they started beating the children to death. So they came up with a law that basically said it's okay to kill off children. If your family was affected by that, then I believe you should get reparations from that. If your family was native and was killed off due to chemical warfare, I believe that you should get reparations from that. If your family had people that were hung from trees and that was legal to do, as a matter of fact, they had things called picnics where they would pick an N-word and they would hang them and sometimes even eat the N-word, what was left over them after they burned them up. And if they didn't eat what they cooked, they would just take pieces of it and take it home, put it on the mantle, and they would be able to show it to people, and it would be prized possessions that people still to this day pay for these prized possessions to be able to have in their stuff, making money transfer from one person to the next to the next. There's people that have slave records that sell them from one family to the next to the next to the next, and they gain in value making money. If you are somebody who has had your family made money like that, sure, get reparations from it. Now, if you're talking about getting yourself free from an actual system, because that's legal, that's all lawful. Now, if you're talking about coming free and loose from a system of oppression, here's your reparation, because I don't believe that they're going to give us reparations anyway. If they were going to do something that was righteous, they would have done it already, right? So they're not going to pay us what we deserve as far as lawfully and legally, because they paid the slave masters reparations for letting go of the slaves because they were property. So if they're not going to give us that, right? If you feel that's righteous, if you feel that that's the right legal standing in your community, if you're not going to give us the same kind of respect, then here's what we'll do. We'll make sure that we have our own land. We'll make sure that we have our own food. We'll make sure that we get with people that are like-minded. We'll make sure that we stop asking you for anything, because a real king should be a monarch, and a monarch, because capitalism means he or she that has king is in charge of the system. So Bill Gates can make decisions that you and I can't make because he's got money like that, right? I'm forgetting the name of the guy. I'm looking, I see his face. But I can't think of him right now. He'll come back to me. But whoever these people are, right, that you think are running the show, and by the way, the people that really run the world, you never even heard their names before. So all these people that are doing this dirty, sure, let's make it a point to say that we'll just go ahead and make sure that we do things on our own. Somebody said even whites are of Egyptian ancestry. Okay, which whites? And those who are on the podcast, thank you for being on once again. We're probably about to lose you guys in about a minute or so. So we appreciate you guys being on. Feel free to check us out on IG or on TikTok, or watch the rest of this later on YouTube. So yeah, which whites are you talking about? That's a very interesting kind. Which whites? Because there's a difference between Egyptian ancestry and Kemetic ancestry. Are we talking about the people that were Greeks that came over to Kemet? Are we talking about the Romans that came over to Kemet? Are we talking about the people that you say are Egyptians, but they actually speak French as a second language, because Arabic French people are actually people that are coming from somewhere else and making their way over to Kemet, and then trying to tell people that are in Kemet that it's actually them who built the pyramids and stuff, even though they have no clue about it? Think about that. The people who are supposed to be the people of Egypt are telling people that we don't know how to build what we built, but we know we built it. And then the only thing left after that makes sense is, well, aliens built it. Because if a black person could have built something that I couldn't build, well, that can't be possible. So I got to pull an alien out my behind, right? I got to do the reverse of Aliens movie. Instead of it coming out of here, I got to pull them out of here somewhere. I got to pull an alien out, because that's my trump card. And I'm not trying to talk about politically, I'm talking about trump card isn't cards, right? That's my card. Like, that's my card that's gonna win. That's my big joker. That's my little joker. Like, if the little joker is, it's ours. If somebody doesn't believe that because we can't prove that we made it, well, the big joker is, hey, aliens had to do it. Because you can't argue aliens, can you? That's the stuff. So can you be independent from this corporation? Yeah. Matter of fact, you can be independent. I suggest that you get certain paperwork done, but you can be independent from this corporation by simply just making a decision to not deal with benefits or privileges. You can't be taxed for something that you don't use. People think so. But that's because they told you that. They said, and what they do is, once again, trump card. They put something on it that doesn't make sense. So they'll say to you, oh my gosh, it's so terrible that you would dare not pay taxes or whatever. Well, I don't send my children to school. Yeah, but other children go to school. You're going to let those children just not have money? But they don't get their books and stuff because of tax money. They get their books and stuff because people give to the school. If it all was about tax money, then you wouldn't have schools that have less and schools that have more. Well, you need to I homeschool my children. Well, still there's other people that need to, okay, well then people who pay taxes do what they do with their money, but that's not part of what I do. Right, so you don't even have to sign paperwork. Like, if you're not part of something systemically, right, and you're not systematically helping to set something up, why should you have to pay for it? That's against the law. And I'm not telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I know. Let's see. Lootbox says, I've heard that our social security number ties us to a type of bank account like born employees. So true that. My wife actually had to make sure that I was strengthened in this knowledge of this recently. On the back of social security cards, at least on the original, and on the receipt thing that comes with it as well, you actually can see an account number that goes with it. Regardless, though, that account number actually started because social security cards are not supposed to be used for any kind of identification. A lot of people don't know that. And we teach this stuff more in our sovereignty classes. We have Sovereignty 1, Sovereignty 2, as well as we teach monarchy, some other classes that help you be able to learn these things. And they're actually stuff that we do to help you to get a degree if you even want to use it to further your education or whatever in our university, SOC University, a university we started in 2015, 2016, but online university. As we get land and stuff, maybe we'll have it to where people can come on a physical campus as well. But right now it's an online university, and we're dealing with stuff simply as what it is. And like, people don't comprehend, like, law protects rights. Law doesn't give rights, but law protects rights. Remember that. Law doesn't give rights. Law protects rights. So a lot of people keep talking about let's deal with civil rights and this and that or whatever, and we need rights to protect our civil rights. You have rights already, right? But the law is there to protect your right. So if somebody's talking about civil rights is the answer, no, you have civil rights. Law is the answer. What laws are in the books? We use this as an example all the time. Somebody would say police brutality is a problem. We need to make sure that we deal with police brutality. There's no such thing as a law for police brutality. So if you're looking for police brutality, you're talking about that you have a right not to be brutalized by police. But you're trying to find a law. You're saying that we need laws against police brutality. No, you need laws to protect you from things that are brutal that police do. So check this out. Instead of saying, I need police brutality, you look for the rights that are being violated. You go in front of the judge and you say, hey, this person is trying to circumvent my civil rights. Now we have a different conversation. Now the judge has to look at it and listen to it differently. Sister Beverly over there laughing at me. Right? So it's a different mindset. Right? But people don't comprehend because they don't study law. They don't want to be about law. They don't want to think about law. Right? There's no gold backing up your money. There's no gold or silver. So how can you be in debt for something that's not real? That's why you can discharge debt. But you can only discharge debt that's public debt, not private debt. Do you know the difference between public and private? Because we live in a society today where on social media, people put all their private out for everybody to see. And then you're trying to figure out why the public has control over you. Public is government. The government can control all that stuff. So everything I put out here, I put out a lot. But that's why I said, I understand there's certain things people ask questions about. Hey, we're going to talk about that online. You want to call me up? We can talk about it. If you want to come on a Zoom session, we can talk about whatever. But if it's public, it's out there for all to see. It's out there to be controlled. Oh, yeah. Somebody else said, I want to know which whites team. Yeah, I'm still waiting on that. I forgot about that question. But people will say stuff like that. What state am I from? I mean, I live kind of all over the place, I guess. If you want to say where I was born in Maryland. So that would make me from one of the 50 states, one of the 50 countries. And therefore, that's proof. That's proof. When I show my birth certificate, I don't use it as a straw man, but I do use my birth certificate as proof that I am a natural man, that I am a non-citizen national. That's what allows me to be there. And to say what I say and to speak what I speak, in or outside of court of law. Breezy Mama said, knowing how corrupt the government system is, why would any of us want for them to give us anything? And that's the question, but it's set up that way, right? It's set up to where you're not going to feed yourself. You're not going to grow your own food. You're not going to look for your own water source. You're not going to trade with each other, right? Like, because we could easily, we've been talking about this for a while. Prayerfully next year, we'll get this going. Somebody's going to have to like take over a lot of the stuff for me to make it happen, because I got other things to concentrate on. But one of the things we've been trying to get people to do is, hey, grow your own food and then trade it with each other. Like by June, July of next year, if everybody started, at the beginning of spring, there'll be certain crops that people should be able to start trading with each other. And heck, if you're paying at the store, huge amounts of money for things because they say it's organic, but they're not even doing stuff. They still process it. And if you're getting it in a box, they process it. If you're getting it in a can, they processed it, right? If they're having to process this stuff anyways, if you're getting it as coffee, they processed it. Why not just get somebody who's growing it and just pay them, and they'll pay you for your product, and you guys are just going grocery shop. But when you get it, especially if you get a plant, like let's say somebody gives you the tomato plant, right, or the vine, rather than just a tomato by itself. Even if they give you a tomato by itself, by the way, the seed is still great. You could just slice up the tomato and put the tomato slice on the ground, and you could grow your own tomatoes, right? Nevertheless, though, somebody's giving you organic stuff that they grew. If they give you the plant, the vine, right? If they can find a way to transfer the vine overnight delivery and get it to you within 24 hours and make sure that everything's taken care of, as far as that plant being protected, or if they can give you the, they can give you the actual power greens and give you the power greens that can grow into turnips or grow into whatever you're using the power greens, whatever, you can just pay amongst yourselves. Like, it's that simple. We have people that are all over the country. All we have to do is every once in a while, once a week, people could decide, once every other week, something like that. People could just say, hey, we take long trips anyway. Let's just take a 2 to 4 hour trip. We'll meet somebody else. We'll just simply switch out with people as far as what goods are there, and I'll take these goods back. I'll bring them to my community. You take these goods back. You bring them in yours. Now everybody's planting. Before you know it, people can, and you can grow this stuff indoors. You can grow it outdoors. So, right, you can grow some of this stuff with a lot of lights. You can grow some of the stuff with no light. Some of the stuff you can just buy light, certain types of light, and put it in your house. Like, we did that stuff in an apartment. My wife had us go straight to IKEA. We just went to IKEA and we did that stuff in an apartment. That was where we started making our own food first, right? So it's something that's there. It's something that can be done, and if it's naturally done, it'll grow on its own. You don't even have to put that much work into it. But it has to be something that we decide to do. You said a student debt private. Student debt is interesting. Student debt I put on the side of public, but student debt still can be, regardless of which, you can still discharge, because at the end of the day, student debt, and each person's thing is its own. Each person's journey is their own, right? So I'm not gonna act like it's one size fits all. You have to do research. You got to see the state. You have to see if it's in collections. You have to see if you're still dealing with the original people. You have to see if you started paying the loan or not. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it. But at the end of the day, money's not real because it's not backed up by gold or silver. So if anybody gave you any loan of any type and they said, we gave you $5,000, where's our $5,000 plus interest back, right? You need to be honorable. Now, if you can't afford to pay it, you should be paying it. Right? If you made an agreement with somebody and knew you were going to pay it, be honorable, right? That's the thing that gets a lot of people caught up too, as they try to be sovereign without being honorable. Sovereignty deals with spirituality. It deals with being a monarch. It deals with being a king under the king. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about sovereignty. So you should be honorable. Every king should be honorable. Every queen should be honorable. Nevertheless, if something happens where you can't pay something and somebody's going to try and take a whole bunch of stuff that you have that they didn't even work for because they say you owe them, well, time out. Maybe that's the case. However, you gave me something. You said I had something I never had. You never put gold or silver in my hand. You never even put cash in my hand, right? So if there's something that I didn't spend, especially, but even if I did spend something or whatever, you never did it. And by the way, if you're a collection agency, that means you paid for the right to be able to have this debt. That means you paid off my debt to now try and get the debt from me a second time. If you paid off my debt, that's a bill of exchange, right? I'm not paying nothing that you already paid off. But we teach this stuff in Sovereignty 1 and in Sovereignty 2. We'll be having those classes, Sovereignty 1, Sovereignty 2, French, or Basic French, Basic Hebrew, Natural Medicine 2, Cryptocurrency, and I'm forgetting something else. Oh, and Hebrew characters. Hebrew characters and Basic Hebrew are going to be two separate classes. So we'll be teaching those things starting at the end of January. So if you're interested in learning those things, it's a very minimum donation we ask for to be able to help us to run things and to keep getting closer to having our land taken care of and looking at other projects and making sure children or people that might need things can be taken care of. So if you're interested in being part of that situation and part of that with us, just let us know, and we'll get that information to you. So do I have a driver's license? I do. However, you don't have to have one. If you keep it, it doesn't really mean much either way. But even if you have a driver's license, you can still make sure that you have a car that doesn't have a license plate, that you make your own license plate for. It doesn't stop or start anything, and you still don't have to use your driver's license as a form of ID. Just like I was talking about with Social Security numbers. Social Security card is not supposed to be used as identification. It's actually illegal. The only reason why people do it is because the IRS years ago started asking for companies to do so, and they give them a kickback. But your Social Security number is not supposed to be used for identification at all. Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to look at multiple things at the same time. Okay. But yeah. You said if you have a home birth instead of a hospital birth. I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that. How do you get a document for something that says it was a live person born? First and foremost, you just got to be able to prove it. Can you prove it? Number one, there's documentation outside of stuff. You can find documentation and sign contracts and things like that. But your child doesn't have to. The only reason why the IRS wants your child to have a birth Social Security attached to it is because it's about money. It's about making sure they can track it. And people were lying in the beginning to the IRS to get bonuses. They might only have 2 children, but they lied and said they had 10 or something like that. So that's the reason why they want you to have the birth certificate on their end, the IRS. The birth certificate on the end of somebody else's to say that you are not a natural person, but that you were lost at sea, all that stuff, dealing with maritime law, things like that, right? So that allows them to be able to utilize you, and your birth certificate is worth like $6 million something dollars per person. Might be more now, but I think a few years ago it was like $6 million and something dollars per person, because they believe that the average person, that's what it'll average out to, because a lot of people, everybody's going to be a slave. They're going to have jobs, they're going to break down, a lot of people aren't going to make it to certain ages and things like that. So their average that they think people will make as far as what the average person makes putting all this stuff in order is about $6 million. But all you got to do, if you have a live birth at the house, you record it. You record it, you make sure there's witnesses. So you make sure other people are there to see that the baby comes out. You make sure that there's affidavits that are signed. Affidavits are just witnesses. So you have people sign affidavits saying that your child was born. And if anybody tries to say that child wasn't born, this and that or whatever, you say, no, I have an affidavit. If somebody says your child can't go to school without a social security number, you say that that's illegal. If I want my child to go to school, you can. But heck, if you homeschool your child, what does it matter? Right? You have records of it. I would make sure that you trust somebody else with copies of this stuff. Or copies of the even original copies, like get 2 originals done of some of this stuff at the same time, and make sure that somebody else has it. So in case something happens to you, your child can be under somebody else's care, and you have legal documentation saying it. But there's a lot of stuff you can do without the government. It's like if you get married. If I marry somebody, I'm gonna do it one of 2 ways. Either you're gonna go because I don't, because legally. You have to have permission in whatever state that you're marrying somebody in to marry them, right? So I can't just go to California and say, well, I was ordained in DC, so therefore, and I was licensed in Maryland, ordained here, and I was ordained there. Just because I could be ordained doesn't mean that my license means anything over in California to marry somebody, right? So there's one of 2 ways I'm gonna do a marriage. Either you're gonna get married, I don't prefer this way, but you're gonna get married legally in court first. Right. It also helps with making sure that I don't have to worry about you got somebody going to slip out of this thing and somebody going to get cold feet or whatever. Like y'all already married. So now we just doing this in front of everybody else for witnesses purposes. Right. Or because that's putting you in the system. Or you can just go ahead and draft up your own contract. You can draft up your own marriage contract. A contract, according to the Constitution, is more important than is more valuable or is more binding than the Constitution itself. Any contract you sign is actually more binding. That's why you need to make sure you get that UCC 1-308 on there. What is my nationality? My nationality, as far as is many different things. I'm many different people. But if you're talking about legally on the books, as far as America is concerned, my nationality is I am a non-citizen national. I am a natural person. I am a human being. I am a citizen of Maryland, not a citizen of the United States Corporation. God said, how do you get a document or something that says it was live person born? Once again, you have affidavits. You have film. That's admissible in court, right? Or film. You got recording, right? And you make sure you save it somewhere. Put it in a vault somewhere. You can get virtual vaults. Put it in a vault somewhere where nobody can open it up or mess with it or tamper with it. And only give it to people you trust, right? Maybe you, your spouse, and then whomever else you guys decide that you can trust. Make sure that you, basically that's all you need at that point. Even if you have a baby that's born in the hospital, technically that hospital, you can tell, even though they went against it, like they did with one of our children, where they went against our wishes. But even if you have the child born in the hospital, you don't have to, when you have a child born in the hospital, you don't have to tell them, or they don't have to have a birth certificate. And even if they try to force the birth certificate on you, they definitely don't have to have a social security number, even though they'll try to force that on you too. So you can tell them, you can have a written agreement, a contract with them that says when this child is born here, they will not have a social security card, they will not have a birth certificate. And the witness will be the doctor. Now they say, well, how do we know they were witness here? Well, we got hospital documentation. We got documents here that say that this was what happened. If you have a doula that comes to help out, have the doula have some kind of stuff that you sign that says there's an agreement there. Have her sign another affidavit saying that she witnessed the child being born. Have family members and stuff there. Right? Have the mother, have the mother or both. People show up if the fathers don't feel comfortable seeing the birth. Have the mothers of both, of the father and the mother, right? So both grandmothers, the paternal grandmother, the maternal grandmother show up. Have people there to sign affidavits. You can have proof of something. You don't have to go to the government to have the government say that they give you permission. That's what, like the person was asking about the driver's license. The reason they're asking is because I could get rid of my driver's license and just get a state ID, because you're not allowed to have both at the same time, right? So if I go get a state ID, my driver's license doesn't matter anymore, but the driver's license means that I have been allowed by the government to drive, which means that I don't drive. So that's why when you get pulled over something, they say, where were you driving? First thing you say is, I wasn't driving anywhere, I was traveling. they're doing, it's a legal battle going on. A lot of people don't know because we're not about law. So there's something legally going on with you right now, right? And a lot of people don't comprehend it. How do you find us on social media? YouTube. Once again, you can look up hashtag FindKofi, hashtag FIND, my name, KOFI. Look up hashtag FindKofi. That's our YouTube channel, but you can put hashtag FindKofi in on Google and just see what pops up. Oh, I missed where my wife was saying. She's probably talking about how she didn't have to. Yeah, she didn't have. Well, my wife didn't have a Social Security number until she got older. And then when they said in school, when she went to college, they were like, "Well, we can't give you a loan unless you give your Social Security number." So she just did it then, and her mom agreed or whatever. But had they known that that's a lie, you can't use a Social Security number as an actual kind of identification. It's illegal. Where can you find the sovereignty classes? Just go ahead and contact me. You can DM me. We have information about some of the stuff up on our website, but it hasn't been updated yet for those classes. They're happening in January, nevertheless. You can go to Kofi-Ofori.com. That'd be KOFI hyphen, not underscore like here, but hyphen, KOFI hyphen OFORI.com. And check out some information on some of the stuff. Sovereignty 1 is up there. Sovereignty 2 hasn't been put up there yet as far as the what we're going to be teaching about in each of the sessions. But you can go there to look. We do it on Zoom. We do it at 9 o'clock p.m. All of our classes at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. They're Mondays through Sundays. So you'll only be doing the class once a week. But Sovereignty might be on Monday. Natural Medicine 2 might be on Tuesday or something like that. French might be on Wednesday, something like that along the line. So whatever class you sign up for that quarter that we're teaching, you'll be able to get those classes right then and there. Yeah, right. Yeah, my wife's saying they wouldn't give scholarships without the Social Security number, but even still, the scholarships and stuff like that, they say it can't be given. That's not true. They can't use a scholarship. They can't use a Social Security number without to use it for identification purposes. So if they're saying that we won't give you the scholarship because we can't identify who you are and keep track of you, then they're actually doing something illegal. Banks do the same thing. We're not going to give you this bank account unless you do blah, blah, blah. Well, all you got to do is go above the bank. You know that you can go to people that outrank people in the bank, or you can even go higher than somebody in the bank. So if somebody is not a teller, but whoever the person is that you deal with in the bank who's supposed to be counseling you and helping you with your, I guess they're a customer account representative or something like that, but whatever, that person who's supposed to be helping you with your account and build an account, they say, well, we can't do anything with that, your social. You say, let me talk to your boss, right? And if they say that, all you do is you say, okay, hold on 1 second. You talk to somebody in the government. The government will come on your behalf. That's why you have to know the government are public servants. You call up the government, you got to know who, but all you do is you go to next in line and you say, hey, look, I'm trying to open this account. They're telling me that I can't open this account unless I give them my Social Security number. I know it is illegal for my Social Security number to be used as any kind of form of identification. You guys are going to need to have to talk to them about this and make sure they comprehend it. And I have my passport. I have anything else that they might need, but I'm not going to use my Social Security card. Same thing goes with what we're talking about with that driver's license. Somebody might say, hey, sir, I need your driver's license. Legally, you don't need my driver's license. Legally, I don't need a driver's license unless I'm driving. I'm not driving, I'm traveling. So here's my passport. Here's my state ID. Here's whatever. Like, you don't have to have a number that identifies me. You said, who were the Black Irish? You're talking about the people that lived in Ireland itself, or you talking about the Montserrat? Because there's the Isle of Montserrat. I've actually been thinking about putting that back up since they took it down off of the page before this one that we have on TikTok. But you have the Isle of Montserrat, the Black Irish, literally black people and Irish people who were enslaved together and came up together and have a whole culture of them them coming together. And you'll see people that look black sitting up there singing Irish hymns. But if you're talking about going back to them, all you gotta do is look up who the Celtic people were. If you're talking about way back in antiquity, look up who the Irish people actually were, the Celtic people actually were, and see that they stretched all the way from Africa at one point, all the way through Asia, all the way up into Europe. So there's a lot of black people who are Irish and probably don't even know it. Like a lot of black people are native and don't even know it. Zacchaeus says, what if you're trying to get a car? If you're trying to get a car, you don't have to use your Social Security number? I mean, that's why in some places, in some places, if you show up with all cash, they don't even care what you show. You just say, I want that car, right? And you leave. Because they'll do that for you, but they're only doing that if they need control or whatever. So a lot of times it's best to have yourself in a position where you can own. I know there's a lot of people that say control everything and own nothing, put everything under an LLC, this and that or whatever. I mean, it works in a sense, but the reality is that anything that you don't own can be controlled. So you might be able to say you control it right now, but all it takes is a trustee down the line, because right now you could be the person that created the trust. You could be the trustor, the trustee, and the beneficiary all at the same time. But once you're gone, it might not translate to your children, because somebody who knows trust law can look for one little thing that you did. But if you own it and you make it like a micronation per se, let's say like you have land or you have a car, but in the car that you own, and you put it on land that you own, you make it a micronation. It's not even part of the United States or even the United States of America. It's your personal land that you have made your own. Legally, it's not that hard to do, right? Once you do that, why would you pay tax? You don't pay taxes to something that's not part of the United States corporation. You pay taxes to yourself if you choose to. You can write law that says you pay taxes to yourself. You don't have to. Right? These are all things that you can come up with. Right? So you don't have to have any of these. You don't have to have a driver's license. You can choose to keep it, but you don't have to use it. The driver's license says that you say that the government allows you to drive, but if you just say, well, I'm not driving, I'm traveling, then that means that the government has no say-so over your travel. See, that's what I was talking about. Like, people don't understand. That's going back to this whole thing that kind of started this journey on part one last Monday. If we look at this journey, we started off talking about even what is a universe. Or, well, yeah, we talked about that, but I guess we started when we got to creation. Nevertheless, what is a universe? A universe is a single spoken sentence. A verse spoken sentence. So if you're in a universe, you're in a single spoken sentence. All law has to come out of universal law, kingdom law, marital law, natural law, laws of attraction, law of first mention. They all have to follow those laws. Now, if they get perverted, it's because that you have to agree to the perversion, right? If I walk into a courtroom and they say, "Are you Kofi Ofori?" If that's so you walk in, let's say that's the straw man name, and they say, "Are you Kofi Ofori?" I say, "I'm not Kofi Ofori. I'm here to represent Kofi Ofori." That's legal. That's lawful. We just haven't been taught that, because the birth certificate is not you. You are not on trial. It is your birth certificate that's on trial, right? So you're talking about the natural man. You is showing up for the straw man, right? The fake man that they made up. That's what you're saying. Or if you come into court, they say, "How do you plead?" Animals plead. So I do not plead anything. I cannot plead innocent, nor can I plead guilty. I am simply here to represent myself as a natural man, and I see that you're trying to use the fake straw man to be able to get to me, the natural man. So you can speak to them like that. They have to speak to you differently, and they'll keep trying to test you. They're going to try to see what you'll do. They're going to try to see. Sometimes they might even put you in cuffs, but they won't let you leave the room. But they'll put you in cuffs just to see what you do. Sometimes they'll have the bailiffs stand next to you. Bailiff won't touch you, but they'll stand next to you, see what you'll do. Right? But you can talk to them like that. They're public servants. You have to speak their language. You have to speak lawfully. Anything that you give permission to is what they're going to treat you as. This is why we're talking about this stuff having been led as we believe. We're giving permission to this fake Thanksgiving type of mentality, this thing that causes divisiveness, this thing that causes people to be all over the place, this thing that makes you think that because you're out of prison, you're not a prisoner, right? I learned that the hard way. Right? Was put in prison, got out of prison, thought everything was good, but still had to wear the ankle bracelet. That was a reminder everywhere I went. I couldn't go certain places. I couldn't be outside of certain places. I couldn't go certain places after a certain time, because I had to make sure that wherever I was, I had to make sure that was where I was allowed to be. If I was outside of where I was allowed to be, I was going to go right back in prison. So my whole life was imprisonment. And a lot of people think, well, okay, I don't have an ankle bracelet on. Well, guess what? If you make $1,000 this week, but you only get to keep $400 to $500 of it, something's going on. That doesn't make sense, right? We would normally say that doesn't make sense. Something doesn't make sense in that, but we keep doing the same thing over and over again. You said, so what happens when you tell a cop you're traveling? You tell the police officer you're traveling. The police officer might not know, but this is why you do certain things to make sure you cover yourself. Make sure that you have these laws together. Make sure that you have a booklet. You can have a booklet that shows the police officer, as far as legally, what you're allowed to do. People from other countries do this all the time. Like people from other countries, they live here, they don't pay taxes. Right? You're not supposed to be in the United States. You're supposed to be in the United States of America. You're not supposed to pay taxes. So you can have a booklet and things and be armed with certain things to tell people. But a police officer pulled me over one time, and I was going to this thing I was contracted to do. And, be honest with you, I didn't have the, one of the brake lights is out. Right. And it's been like that. I use it as a work vehicle. It's like a minivan, but it's pretty big. I use it as a work vehicle, and it doesn't look nice, like the paint chipped off and everything. I don't really care about the appearance of it. Right. It's just it gets the work done that I need to do, whether it's getting clothes or making sure that we can get donations, or, even sometimes I go to pretty nice, ritzy, fancy places in it. I don't care. Right. It's a vehicle I use for work. And the guy pulls me over. And he goes to this long spiel of, well, this, that, or whatever. And so he says, well, where are you driving? I said, I wasn't driving. I was traveling. I was traveling over to work. Now, he must have known a little bit of what I was talking about. So he paused. And then he says, well, can I see your this, that, whatever? And I was in another state, so he's asking for all the stuff, including insurance and stuff like that. I have insurance, but the insurance card wasn't on me. So he was like, well, you're going to need that insurance card, blah, blah. Right now, I still made sure that I had the insurance information sent to me so he could see it in a picture. However, he couldn't do anything about the insurance even if I didn't have it. You know why? Because I wasn't in his state. He's in a different country. Every state is a country. So they can't look like, have you ever thought about the fact that we're in a place where everybody should be able to pull up your stuff around the country? Like if you buy something at McDonald's in California, the McDonald's Corporation might be stationed, the part of the corporation that might be stationed up in Massachusetts can pull up all your information about that call, right, and about that order if they want. Yet when it comes to prison, they can't do that. Or when it comes to your cars, even, they can't do that. When it comes to tickets, they can't do that. So the guy takes my stuff or whatever, and he's like, okay, well, I can't pull up all the information for this, that, or whatever because it's in a different state. And I was like, yeah, I know. We're here. Here's my stuff or whatever. And so he looks at it. He's like, oh, okay. Well, he's like, your insurance is in a different state than that. I was like, yeah, but it doesn't matter where it is. Like, it's over the vehicle. That's the important thing, right? I had to start coaching him through it. And then by the end of it, then he started saying, oh, well, what do you do? And I was telling him stuff that I do. He's like, oh, okay. And you're working on a home? Yeah, you just got a home and we're trying to build it up and blah, blah. And it became this whole discussion. By the end of it, he still had to make sure he gave me something to get himself out of trouble because he realized he was wrong. So guess what he did? He wrote down 3 things that you would think I'd go to prison for. He writes down this ticket, but he says it's not a ticket. He says it's a warning. That's where they get you, right? And a lot of times we think a warning is them letting us off. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's because they don't have anything on you. So the dude goes, well, and I looked on there, and it was very weird the way he wrote it out or typed it up. But long story short, the first one, it was like 3 different things. He said, basically, the car was dangerous, which where I was at the time in that particular place, you can have a brake light out as long as you have the other brake light that works. You can have a whole light out in the front, a whole light out in the back. I knew this stuff because I studied the state that I'm in. He didn't know. Nevertheless, but you got to coach him on stuff. Nevertheless, he was like, well, you driving a dangerous vehicle. Then he said your windshield's messed up because the windshield, being honest, it had a little crack in the front, right? But in that state, the windshield can have a crack in the front. So he didn't even know that. But he was just writing whatever he can to say this is to cover his behind. So this is why I stopped him. Because also what I had, it has UCC 1-308 on it, too, on the signature. Right, so you got to understand, when they go to dispatch and they have a conversation back and forth, sometimes they're looking at your stuff. They're looking at who you are. They're looking at how you're represented. They're looking at what your name pops up as. They're looking at, do you have the right to carry? They're looking at all this stuff that's going on. A lot of people have no clue. So, he's looking for whatever he can find on me. And basically, he couldn't find anything to arrest me on, and then found out that, man, I messed with the wrong person after having a conversation. And then at the end of the day, he's sitting at my feet. I'm teaching him how to get his stuff together. That he probably stopped me and seen the vehicle, thinking there's a black dude, thinking the dude doesn't have the proper haircut and all this stuff. Therefore, he must be about this and that or whatever. He talked about trying to see, I might have to look inside the car. I was like, and I just looked at it. I said, we'll get to that when we get there. In other words, I didn't even go to the consent. I'm always honorable. You always got to be honorable. So I didn't even go to consent. I don't give you consent. I was just like, we'll get to that when we get there. And that was my way. He looked at me because I used to do police work. So I understand how this works. So he looked at me. He kind of just looked at me like and smiled a little bit and walked away because he knew that basically I was telling him, you don't have no right to search me. You haven't found anything that says you can search me. The only thing that you even make you say is that I'm black. I was stopped with that same vehicle somewhere else before. I think that was 2-3 years before that. And when I stopped with that same vehicle, the guy stopped me and he said, oh, no, actually, was it the same vehicle? It might have been a different vehicle at that time. I'm not sure. But either way, it was a very similar vehicle. And the guy stopped me and he said, you're driving through here. You had a vehicle, and that vehicle, he told me straight up. He said, I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong. I just had to stop you and see what was going on because he said there's nothing wrong. Nothing came up in the system. He said, however, people in the area who drive this vehicle, they usually steal it. So what he was telling me without telling me, he was straight up. I appreciated him telling me. I actually treated him with respect because at least he told me. Like he was straight up like, look, I'm gonna just tell you real talk. I'm supposed to make sure that I meet a quota. You are a black dude driving this type of vehicle in this type of area, usually a black person driving this type of vehicle in this area this time of night. It's usually going to be somebody that we think is stealing. So I'm going to look you up to see if you're stealing. Like he told me. He told me straight up, right? Like, you know, and my wife can vouch for me on these things because whenever something happens like that, I'm quick to make sure my wife is on. There have been times I've gotten on a live as well to make sure somebody can see what's happening in case something crazy happens. But I'm quick to be like, hey, babe, gotta stop. You see the lights, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I'm pulled over for yet. And she can listen in and she can know, she can hear if you're going here, there, whatever. It's things like that. But the dude told me straight up. He was like, yeah, I'm pulling you over because you just happen to fit a description that we're supposed to make sure, and we got to make sure we put people in prison. He didn't tell me all that, but I knew because I've studied. I knew what he said. Like, I knew exactly what he was saying. So I said, okay. You know, and he could have decided to do something to me, but you got to understand as a sovereign too, if they even do something to you, you know what happens? You get to get 4 times worth, you get to get money, and it's got to be either gold or silver, or it's going to be 4 times worth what it is. So if you waste my time, you put me in prison, I'm not even going to fight you. You're going to put me in prison? Go ahead, take me there, right? I'm going to go in front of the judge. I'm going to be freed. And when I am, I'm going to make sure they understand who I am. And I'm going to say, hey, you know, somebody, this was out of procedural law. You messed up. So what's the remedial law? What's the remedy for it? Right? What's the remedy for it? Like that's, you know, so you're going to give me something for wasting my time. But we don't speak law very well. We don't speak natural law very well. We don't speak kingdom law very well. We don't speak in confidence very well. You said, can you withdraw? What about Nexus Lexus? I don't know what Nexus Lexus is, and in all honesty, I have to look it up. Coleman said, I'm so happy I can wear my natural hair at work on my 4th set of lock because of having to cut it. Yeah, there's people we've met. That's actually an interesting thing. I'm not going to stay on too much longer. It's time for me to get ready to take my leave soon. But we met a lot of people who are actually like, walk up to me and be like, man, it's so nice that you and your family, y'all are wearing your hair and this and that. And, you know, one guy we met, I don't know if it wasn't at a Walmart. Where was it at? We were going shopping for something electronic. Not a Walmart, but not a Costco. All these places look the same to me. It's hard for me to remember. It's an electronics place. Best Buy. It was a Best Buy, and at the Best Buy, the guy came, and you could tell he used to, you know, have long hair, whatever he was trying to grow up at. But he was talking about how long his hair used to be. And Best Buy basically said, well, you're gonna have to cut your hair due to the fact that, you know, we think it's scaring the customers. That was their way of saying like you too much into your culture. Thanks for the agreement, Beverly. I see you. Hey, how you doing? It's Rise in Anubis. Yeah, popular opinion is not law, exactly. All right, cool. Amen. Yeah, so I just got a text from somebody about sovereignty classes, so we'll try to get back to you ASAP. Thank you for that. Where should you study all this? Start study. I would say, you know, look for some of these. There's people they call gurus when it comes to sovereignty. But, you know, there's a guy I listened to who really opened up my eyes to the spiritual aspect, even though he cusses and does a lot of stuff. I don't agree with everything that comes out of his mouth. And honestly, he's a black Republican. even though he won't call himself that, but basically if you listen to him, he's a black Republican. I don't deal with Republicans or Democrats, by the way. Nevertheless, when it comes to law, he's going to tell you some truth. He's going to tell you some stuff spiritually that you need to hear. It might be stuff that you don't want to hear the way he says it. Listen to what he says, though. Even if you don't want to hear the way he says it, listen to what he says. His name is Yusef L. Yusef space EL. Yusef L. I promise you will be enlightened within. You probably, especially on his live sessions on YouTube, you probably got to fast forward 10 to 15 minutes sometimes, and go through his ranting and raving sometimes. And I get it, because he deals with way more people than I do. And I get it. Like, it's easy to get angered by people who are on here telling you stuff and mess. But the reality is he's on point with stuff he's telling you. A lot of stuff that opened my eyes to the spiritual nature of getting kingdom law and realizing it's the same as universal and natural and stuff like that are from people like him. He's not the first person to open my eyes to that, but he's definitely a real great example to get some stuff from. Get a Black's Law dictionary. I don't care what edition. People are going to say, get this edition, get that. I don't care what edition you got. I don't care if you get the original edition, whatever. Get a Black's Law dictionary. Some people say get the 7th one. Some people say get the 4th one. Get a Black's Law dictionary. Get the PDF and start studying what terms mean. Start studying why you shouldn't want to be a Negro. As far as the law, I'm black all day. I don't mind being called Negro or Negro, because Negro is a West African term. People don't know that. But nevertheless, when I go into a court of law, I'll never be black or Negro or artificial or colored person, anything like that, because they're considered to be artificial people, right? Just like a white person in a court of law is not a real status. However, if you want to be a Moor, if you can prove you're a Moor is a real person in the court of law, right? So you might want to study into that. They come from Black's Law Dictionary. Start studying the UCC, right? When we mention things like UCC 1-207, UCC 1-308, it's the same thing. It's something that allows you to be able to sign a contract, but if the contract is unconscionable, or if it's not doing what it's what it's supposed to, or somebody's dishonorable, you can pull yourself out of it and you can reserve your rights to your humanity. Like stuff like UCC 6611, a lot of people use that when it comes to stuff dealing with college debt or different debts similar. UCC, or even finding out stuff like I said, look up 3002. And if you want to look up 3002 15 A, B, and C, but 3002 15 A is where you're going to find out that the United States is a corporation. It's different than the United States of America. Read the Constitution of the United States of America. Study that and see what they're talking about. Study the Constitution of the United States and see what the difference are and how they're inflicting pain upon people through them not knowing the difference. Study tax law. Study books on privilege, read books on privilege, read books on debt. I wish I could, a lot of people, when they say give a book, I don't even know where to start, because honestly, I don't read the same way that people do. I don't look at stuff the way that people do. I'm be honest with you, I don't necessarily like to read myself, but I find a way to force myself to read certain things I know I need. So I might read an excerpt of something and not read the whole book. Later on, find out or see if I can talk to an expert or somebody on said book, so I can make sure I have the context. But like somebody will say, what books on Black history do you want, right? When we do Black history stuff, I'll tell them, well, anything by Carter G. Woodson. That might be something better. Like, look at Carter G. Woodson and all of his books, not just the Miseducation of the American Negro, which I would say would be like the genesis, if you will, or the Badashit of Black history. But look up, just if you don't know anything about it, you should always start with the Miseducation of the American Negro. But he has stuff on Black women. He has stuff on Black churches and what Black churches actually used to do before they started doing absolutely nothing for your community. Look up anything written by Dr. Amos Wilson. Dr. Amos Wilson's going to talk about finances, financial literacy, and he's going to talk about Black history. Look up Dr. Joy DeGroy, who's going to talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is the reason why you have some of the habits that you have as a community. Look up Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She's going to be the person that's going to teach you, even if I don't agree with everything she says, she's going to get you to start thinking about why are there certain things there, and why is it almost everything you look at can be linked to something as far as the eradication of a people. Look at... the names are endless. Look at, study up on, it doesn't even have to just be Black people. Study up on the life of Pastor John Brown. Look up Sister Sojourner Truth as well. Look up Tim Wise. Look up Jane Elliott. Look up, You know, like there's tons of people. Look up, obviously, I haven't even talked about the four M's that everybody talks about all the time. Marcus Garvey, you know, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers. You know, these are people that you can look up real quick and be able to find out, you know, your story rather than somebody else's story. You know, but the start is once again going to be on culture. Everything I'm talking about, it comes from a cultural perspective. And that's the reason I sound different and come across different than a lot of other people do, is because I'm not looking at things as far as somebody else's culture. I don't look through the prism of somebody else. We're looking at cultural belief, right? And even what we're talking about, thank you, Minister Tamara, and thank you, babe, for the reminders and stuff, that the Bible is not just a book. Even if you believe it to be real, it's not just a book. It's not just a bunch of scrolls. It's law and case study. It's law to protect a certain people, and it's case study to make sure you study what these people have gone through, so that you do not have to repeat certain curses, and that you can get certain things that will be blessings and build upon the shoulders of these people who are the actual people, or the people that are grafted in and become the actual people by adoption, right? That's what the Bible is. So even when we talk about the Bible, that's why I say, even if you don't like the Bible, you should study it. Why? Because there's three branches of government. Why? Because there's the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Why? And you better study the Bible. Why? Because you need two witnesses and all. Well, why do you need two witnesses? Because the Bible says you need to have at least two witnesses, right? You know, think about all the stuff. You know, why is it that law is important? Why do you need to talk about morality? Thank you for the love, Sharice. Thank you for the butterflies. Why is it that you got to talk about morality? You talk about morality because the Bible talks about morality. Why is it that people who don't even believe in creation still believe in something called a God's particle, or the Higgs particle, which is not, you know, that's something that somebody named because they were thinking that this was going to prove how everything came to be. So it was basically going to get rid of God. That's why I called it the God's particle or the Higgs particle. Reality is, when they studied it, they couldn't find out what it is. But all these things that you're finding and hearing people talk about, they go back to it. Natural law. Natural law comes first before you can even talk about substantive law and public and private law. So natural law comes from your nature. Nature is dealing with something universal. Something that's universal had to be spoken into existence. So that's why you can't own something that's really organic. If you ever go somewhere and somebody's selling you something, they say, we own these organic grapes. Not that we sell these organic grapes, but that we made or we own these organic grapes. They can't say they own the organic grapes. They can sell them to you, but they can't say they own them. Why? Because they weren't made by man. They were made by Elohim. So that's why there's a difference between something like, so if you see somebody owns something, so if somebody gives you medicine, that means that they took the medicine, they changed it, and they made their own version of it. They usually concentrate on just one little piece of it, and that's why you get sick, because you're not getting it wholly or holistic. You're only getting a piece of it. So you're getting a piece of it, it comes with side effects, because the side effects wouldn't be there if you had other things on the whole side to be able to make sure you had nothing to affect you on the side. So that's why they can own the medicine. So anything that's owned, they have to outright change it in order to own it. But if Elohim made it, right? They'll say in law if God made it, but if Elohim made it, that means that they can't say that they own it. That's why Monsanto and other corporations try to get you to do anything they can to go to what's not owned. That's why pharmaceutical companies want you to go to stuff that is owned, rather, because if you go to what's not owned, it means the only person that can own it is the one that made it. The one that made it made the heaven and earth. This is law. It's universal. It's natural law. But we're not taught these things. That's why they don't want you to learn about law in your Bible. That's why you'll go to churches and organizations and they keep trying to tell you, oh, it's not about law. You said the person I mentioned, I said Dr. Carter G. Woodson. There's a bunch of names I mentioned. I'm not sure which name you're talking about. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Dr. Amos Wilson. I said Dr. Frances Cress Wilson. That's a woman. Dr. Joy DeGruy. That's a woman. I said Pastor John Brown, that's a man. Jane Elliott, that's a woman. I don't know if she's Dr. Jane Elliott. I don't know if it's Dr. Tim Wise, that's a man. All these different things. You said you got your 6th edition from the library. Yeah, I mean, and that's a huge place to go. Go to the library and just sit down there with law books. Start with Black's Law Dictionary and start looking at the Constitution. I'm behind. My wife has been nicely, gently reminded me, but I hear you, babe, I need to be on it. About making sure our son, he needs to start learning the Constitution. I don't care if he's 6 or not. You need to start learning these things, because people pull black children over or put guns on black children or arrest black children in schools less than 6. That's one of the reasons why he doesn't go to school. Not just so we don't get taxed. And Tara, you said, I get so frustrated with myself because I can't focus on one study at a time. It makes you feel overwhelmed. I can see that. I can get that. You know, I'm somebody who supposedly is supposed to have, and thank you to everybody who's on IG, by the way. We appreciate you. And thanks for being on. We're about to take our leave from TikTok as well. And those who are watching on YouTube later, we're thankful and grateful for you guys being with us. But yeah, you have to, you have to recognize that this stuff is being done on purpose. It's being done systemically. It's been done systematically already. Or else it wouldn't even made it to systemically. Systematically means it was put in place on purpose. And you got to study the law. If you don't study the law, people are going to keep doing things to you and your people that are going to mess you up. And they have messed us up. Go use the restroom, sir. My son's sitting here waiting for a device, and he's sitting here doing the pee-pee things. Go use the bathroom, sir. But yeah, you have to realize these things are coming to pass. Not even coming to pass, they have come to pass. And the question is not, should you do something about it? The question is, will you do something about it? At this point, that's what we're really talking about, is not could you do something, will you do something? We render Elohim's things to Elohim first. However, we don't mind rendering Caesar's things to Caesar. That's lawful, right? But study what Caesar says. If Caesar says you don't have to pay taxes, why would you pay taxes? Think about that. Like people don't think about that. If Caesar says, I'm not talking about what the Bible says. I'm talking about if Caesar says you don't have to pay taxes, why would you keep paying taxes? If Caesar himself, because Caesar has to make law that protects him too. You know that, right? Like the people that are in charge of you, they make law that protects themselves. I said this, people don't like it when I say this about Trump, but I was honest. I said, man, when it came to Trump and stuff, and people were talking about how little taxes he paid and all that stuff, I wasn't mad about the fact that he paid little taxes. I actually got mad at Trump. I was like, what in the world were you doing, fool? Like, you got all this money and stuff, and you still paying taxes? Or if anything, you came negative on your taxes? Who is doing your taxes? Who are you entrusting with your stuff to where you still paying taxes? Don't be mad at Trump because he's not paying that many taxes, if not paying taxes at all, because he could still write off that little 400 and something he had left if he felt like it. But don't be mad that he didn't have to pay anything. Be mad that you paying. Be mad that they got you tricked into believing that you should pay for something that you don't even want. Be mad if you homeschool, and be mad that you still paying taxes for somebody else's child to go to school and your children don't go to school. Be mad that you have to pay for, Black Lives Matter stuff to become an LGBTQ plus pyramid, and that has to be taught to your child. But you, even though it's lawful, you still aren't allowed to be able to, even though it's lawful for you to be able to do so, you can actually sign petitions and stuff to make this happen. But be mad that they won't allow your child to, to be able to learn about the Bible, or they didn't teach you that you could actually have teachers who are interested in it. All you got to do is have a petition and have that teacher teach about the Bible in your school, and they'd have to do it by law. Be mad that they lied to you about that. Be frustrated with that part of the equation, right? Understand that, comprehend they didn't teach you to understand law. They keep telling you to go to an assembly and sit there and listen to somebody preach, and not one time are going to teach you about law. Right. That being said, though, I really do got to take my leave this time. Thank you, everybody, for being on with us. We appreciate the king and queen and each and every one of you. Even if you are not living inside that kingdom or queendom yet, we appreciate the potential king and queen and each and every one of you. I'm thankful and grateful to spend this time with you, make this connection with you, and thank you for being on. We're on every rising at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern, New York time. We're on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, New York time. By the way, I know that we had the signal issue and stuff like that for this rising, so I apologize for those who try to get on Zoom with us. We will make sure that we make it up on Wednesday. We'll just do a bonus session. We'll just do a Q&A session. So for those of you who have the link for Mondays, we're going to put it on Wednesday. If you join up with us on Wednesday, we'll make sure that we do answer whatever questions that we can. And then and that'll be at 6:45 a.m. I'll be on at 6:30 a.m., but 6:45 a.m. Eastern New York time for our early riser session. And then Monday, we'll get back on track, okay? So we'll do a makeup on Wednesday. I apologize once again. It just is what it is. I wasn't able to make it work out. So we appreciate you. We thank you. We honor you. Let's see. Wednesday. Oh, okay. I also messed up, I believe. I think I was telling people we were going to be on live for the special session yesterday. In my head, I keep doing this weird thing where I'm kind of jumped to like the end of the year. So the 26th is not until this Sunday coming up. So we'll still have the special session just in my mind, I kept saying the wrong date. My wife, also, please check out what she's doing, the Honorable Bloom and Flourish. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, and her website. Not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. Remember that the tincture this month is ginkgo. So if you'd like to be able to get some ginkgo, you can go ahead and join us for that. Also, too, she's a herbalist, she's a healer, she's a chemist, and she's a biologist by degree, by the way. So feel free to check out what she has for you guys there. Here's some information where you can be able to reach out to us, and the website, and of course the YouTube channel is #FindKofi, #FindKofi. You can look for my wife at #FindBloom, #FindBloom. And we're thankful, we're grateful for everybody for reaching out to us, and connecting with us. And thank you to everybody once again that came out to Women in Red on Saturday. So I'm still feeding off that. So many great things. And it's just great to see our sisters are getting back to basics, that all of us are getting back to basics, but especially our sisters. We are thankful and grateful that we're learning with you and growing with you. We appreciate you so very much. I believe that's all. That we have. Somebody on here being a troll, that we're lucky that we get to live on stolen lands and with our oppressors. Well, I don't live on my oppressor's land, and I don't believe in luck, but I do believe that you can believe whatever you want somewhere else. Thank you for being on. Peace. So, thank you for everybody for being on. We appreciate you. We're thankful and grateful for this opportunity to roll with you guys again. Feel free to text us at the number that's above. If you call us, it probably won't come in right away the way I had the system set up, but if you text us, you can feel free to text us. We can call you back. I saw some texts coming through already with people asking about things for classes. Those classes are going to start in January. And my wife has a live as well at Bloom and Flourish on TikTok. Not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She has a live as well. That's at 7:00 p.m. Eastern. So my evening ones, which are a little different than the rising ones, the evening ones are usually a little more motivational. However, if you want to choose between one or the other, hers at 7 or mine at 8. If you've been on this one already, feel free to support my wife if you're able to do so. That's Eastern time. And don't forget, we have our 12 Myths of Christmas series. It's been on YouTube, so check that out to catch up with us on that. We're doing that up through the 24th. On the 25th, we're going to do something special that's not Christmas related. However, we will have something on the 25th for those, so that'll be next Saturday, or this Saturday coming up. And what am I looking for? The 25th, and I'm sorry, I'm missing some. On the 25th, on the 26th, we'll have our special session. My wife and I will be on at 8:00 p.m. Eastern in New York time. On the 29th, we'll be doing something on Zoom just for the brothers. So brothers, be ready for that. 29th, I believe that's supposed to be at 8:00 p.m. Eastern New York time. So those that want to be on my wife can be on with her. And then on the 31st, we're going to have our watch night service, which we're going to do on Zoom. I'm not sure if we might open that up to all platforms and stuff, but we'll definitely be on Zoom for that one. If you want the link, we might just put that out for everybody. But we do want Zoom to be available because we want people to be able to give a testimony or talk about what they're trying to do. If you want to have, a 30-second to a minute thing, because we might have a lot of people who want to go out and say something. So, if it gets to be 2-3 minutes, I don't want to be the Grinch. All right. These terms that they use, I don't want to be Scrooge, I don't want to be whatever, but in all honesty, we'll have to keep them somewhat short to make sure that we can get everything in. So we'll start that at 10:30 p.m. Eastern New York time. We'll start off with some music playing in the background, some things like that. We'll start off with some prayer. We'll get a message in, a word. I'll be giving the word this year, and then after that, we'll just basically be led into 2022 with prayer. So if you're interested in any of that, learning any of that, being with us on any of that journey, you have any questions, comments, and concerns, just reach out to us. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being on. And I appreciate the King, Queen, and each and every one of you. And our prayer is that you not only heard these things today, we also pray that you take time out to study these things, right? To pray about these things so that you can apply these things and do these things and make changes in your life that are not just great for you, but great for your society, great for your community as well. So thank you so much. We appreciate you all for being on again. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, aka the Shadow Band One, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we're always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice to the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember as always that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, fam.